Helios Crown was not a space station so much as it was a desperate prayer cast in durasteel and spin gravity. Orbiting the violent, mesmerizing swirls of the blue gas giant Azure, the station sprawled across the void like a thrown gauntlet. It was a monstrosity of engineering, a neutral zone cobbled together from the wreckage of two galactic superpowers that had spent the last 30 years trying to extinguish one another. Today, the station vibrated with a frenetic, artificial joy. Holographic banners the size of city blocks flickered along the docking spires, projecting the clasped hands of a human coalition soldier and a Sarathian knight. The image was synchronized, looping every 10 seconds to coincide with the station's rotation. Inside the viewing decks, crowds from a dozen client species pressed against the transparasteel viewports. They waved flags and cheered, their voices a cacophony of trills, barks, and shouts that filtered through the recycled air. The war was over. The treaties were signed. The bloodshed that had claimed 3 systems and billions of lives was officially finished. But the air tasted of ozone and anxiety. In the lower levels of the promenade, where the sanitation drones hummed and the air recyclers wheezed, the whispers were louder than the cheers. Dock workers muttered about fleet movements in the dark sectors. Traders exchanged rumors that the ceasefire was merely a pause for the Sarathian Empire to reload its plasma batteries, or for the coalition to breed more clone shock troopers. The peace felt thin, stretched tight over a drum of volatile explosives, waiting for a single spark. Sergeant Damon Hale stood near the VIP lift in the Grand Concourse, his back rigid against a pillar of faux marble. He adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar against his neck. He felt like a fraud. He felt like a target. Damon was 38 years old, though the mirror usually showed him a man pushing 50. His face was a map of the war. There was a jagged line of pale scar tissue running from his left temple into his hairline. A souvenir from a shrapnel burst on the moon of Cora II. His eyes, dark and restless, scanned the crowd with a predator's rhythm. Sector 1, clear. Sector 2, clear. Sector 3, movement near the vents. Just a maintenance bot. He forced his breathing to slow. Breathe in, the smell of cheap synth-flower perfume. Breathe out, the smell of burning bodies in a vacuum. The memory hit him like a physical blow, a sudden overlay of the past onto the present. For a split second, the cheering crowd vanished. Instead of dignitaries in silk robes, he saw his squad mates floating in the zero-gravity corridor of the UNS Vengeance, their blood forming perfect red spheres in the air. He heard the hiss of a breached hull and the scream of venting atmosphere. Damon blinked, hard, and the hallucination shattered. He was back on Helios Crown. The music was playing. The war was over. "You are fine," he told himself, the lie tasting like copper in his mouth. Damon tapped his comms bead. "Check in. Keep it distinct. Sector 4 secure," he murmured, his voice a gravelly rumble. "No anomalies. Copy that." "Hail," came the voice of Lieutenant Gorman, the security chief. "Try to look less like you're about to strangle a diplomat. The feeds are picking up your scowl." "It is my happy face, sir," Damon replied, his tone deadpan. "Cut the chatter." "She is docking now." Damon stiffened. The reason he was here, standing guard in a monkey suit instead of rotting in a brig, was arriving. He had punched a colonel 3 weeks ago, a pompous rear echelon officer who had tried to deny medical transport to a group of Sarathian civilian refugees. That right hook had cost Damon his rank and his platoon. Instead of a court-martial, they had given him this ceremonial security, babysitting the enemy. The airlock at the far end of the concourse hissed open. The crowd went silent, a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen from the room. Princess Saris of House Varanth stepped onto the station. She was not what Damon expected. The propaganda posters depicted Sarathians as monsters, towering figures of silver skin and sharp angles. Saris was tall, yes, perhaps 6 feet, but she possessed a lethal fluid grace that made the human dignitaries around her look like stumbling children. Her skin was the color of moonlight on water, a pale, iridescent silver that seemed to catch the harsh station lighting and soften it. But it was her dress that made the breath catch in Damon's throat. It was not fabric. It was alive. The gown was a symbiotic organism, a second skin of shifting bioluminescent petals that flowed over her armor-weave underlayer. The colors pulsed in a slow, rhythmic beat, deep indigo fading to violet, then to a soft, warning white. 4 delicate tendrils, like sensing organs, swept back from her temples, framing a face that was terrifyingly symmetric. Her eyes were solid pools of obsidian, devoid of whites or irises, endless and unreadable. She walked with the weight of an empire on her shoulders. From across the room, Saris felt the station like a physical assault. To a Sarathian, emotions were not abstract concepts. They were broadcasting frequencies. Her species had evolved as apex predators who hunted by sensing the fear of their prey. Over thousands of years, that instinct had refined into high society empathy, a tool for politics and manipulation. Helios' crown was screaming at her. The joy of the crowd felt like frantic, high-pitched static. The greed of the traders was a greasy, oily sensation against her mind. The lust, the boredom, the jealousy, it all crashed against her mental shields like waves battering a cliff. She kept her face impassive, her expression frozen in the mask of royal detachment. But beneath the skin, her nerves were firing wildly. Too many of them, she thought. So loud, so chaotic. She focused on her breathing, expanding the psychic barrier around her mind. She pushed the noise back, creating a small bubble of silence around herself. It was exhausting. Her gaze swept the room, ignoring the bowing diplomats, and locked onto the lone figure standing by the pillar, the human male. He was different. While the rest of the room was a storm of chaotic noise, he was a dense, dark void. She could feel a heavy, suffocating pressure radiating from him, a mixture of guilt, sharp alertness, and a simmering hot anger that tasted like ash. He hates me, she realized. The thought was not frightening. It was familiar. Half her own court hated her for advocating peace. She moved toward the podium, her entourage trailing behind her like the tail of a comet. She had to pass him to reach the stage. As she neared the pillar, the human stepped forward, falling into step beside her flank. He did not bow. He did not look at her face. His eyes were constantly moving, watching the rafters, the crowd, the shadows. "Princess," Damon said. The word sounded foreign on his tongue, sharp and clipped. "I am Sergeant Hale. I will be your shadow until you leave this sector." Saris turned her head slightly, her head tendrils twitching as they picked up the spike of his resentment. A shadow implies silence. "Sergeant," she said, her voice melodic but cold, like wind chiming through ice. "You are projecting loud enough to deafen me." Damon blinked, throwing a confused glance at her. "I did not say anything." "Ma'am." Saris suppressed a sigh. "Humans were so deaf to the world. I was not referring to your voice. You carry your guilt like a loaded weapon. It is abrasive." Damon's jaw tightened. His jaw. He looked straight ahead, his hand resting near the stun baton on his hip. "If I am abrasive, Your Highness, it is because I am the only thing standing between you and 1,000 people who might decide the war is not over today. So you will have to forgive my noise." Saris paused, surprised by the bite in his tone. Most humans she met offered clumsy flattery or trembled in fear. This one treated her like a logistics problem. 1,000 people, she mused, continuing her walk. And you believe you can stop them all? I do not have to stop all of them, Damon said, guiding her around a cluster of kneeling monks. Just the first one who tries. The rest usually get the message. Saris felt a flicker of amusement pierce through her exhaustion. It was a dark, grim humor, but it resonated with her own cynical view of the day. That is a terrifyingly practical philosophy, she noted. It is a Terran thing, Damon muttered. We call it closing the barn door before the horse bolts. Or maybe shooting the horse, I forget which. Saris frowned, the idiom lost on her. Why would you shoot the horse? Is the horse a combatant? Damon looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a second, the soldier vanished and a tired man appeared. It was a joke, princess, a bad one. Just walk. They reached the dais. The political theater began. The ceremony was an exercise in endurance. Admiral Pike of the Coalition, a man whose chest was heavy with medals earned by sending young men to their deaths, spoke for 20 minutes about shared prosperity. He used words like synergy and new dawn. Damon tuned it out. He stood at the edge of the stage, his body angled to shield Saris from the bulk of the crowd. He was working. He watched a cameraman adjust a lens 300 yards away. He watched a waiter's hand tremble as he poured sparkling wine. He watched the ventilation grates above the stage. Something was wrong. Damon narrowed his eyes. The security schematic he had memorized that morning showed 4 drone jammers placed in the upper gantry, designed to prevent unauthorized surveillance. But as he looked up, he saw the faint, telltale shimmer of a distortion field around the 3rd jammer. It wasn't jamming. It was receiving. He tapped his comms. Command, this is Hale. I have a discrepancy in Sector High 3. One of the jammers is running hot. It looks like it has been jury-rigged. Gorman's voice crackled back, dismissive. Negative. Hale. Systems are green. The Sarathian tech delegation swept that area an hour ago. You are seeing ghosts. I am telling you. The heat signature is wrong, Damon hissed, keeping his voice low so the microphones wouldn't pick it up. Send a drone to check it. Stand down. Sergeant, Gorman snapped. The Admiral is wrapping up. Do not cause a scene. Your battle paranoia is noted, but not required. Damon felt a cold prickle at the base of his spine. It was the same feeling he had gotten on Cora 2, right before the ground turned into liquid fire. He looked at Saris. She was standing at the podium now, offering a crystal data shard to the Admiral, the symbolic transfer of star charts. She looked majestic, glowing with an ethereal light, but Damon saw her hand trembling, just a fraction. She knows, he thought. She feels it too. Saris was drowning. The Admiral's emotions were a sludge of ambition and deceit. But there was something else. A sharp, piercing spike of malice cutting through the crowd like a needle. It was not coming from a person. It was coming from above. She looked up, her black eyes widening. Admiral Pike reached out to take the data shard. Damon moved. He did not think. He did not calculate. He simply let the instinct take over, the muscle memory of 1,000 firefights propelling him forward. He broke protocol, sprinting across the stage. Get down, Damon roared. The explosion tore the world apart. It came from the ventilation grate Damon had flagged. A concussive blast of shaped plasma slammed into the stage, shattering the transparasteel podium and vaporizing the Admiral where he stood. The shockwave hit Damon like a hammer. He launched himself into the air, tackling Saris. His armored chest slammed into her organic gown, and they went down together in a tangle of limbs. sliding behind a heavy, fallen decorative column made of synthetic granite. Debris rained down around them, shards of glass, molten metal, and chunks of the ceiling. The artificial gravity flickered, making the room spin and lurch. Damon groaned, the breath knocked out of him. He shook his head, clearing the ringing in his ears. He was on top of her, his body acting as a human shield. He could feel the strange, vibrant hum of her skin against his tactical vest. "Are you hit?" he shouted over the screaming of the crowd. Saris was gasping, her eyes blown wide. Her empathic shield had shattered. She was feeling everything: the terror of the crowd, the dying agony of the Admiral, and the overwhelming white-hot protective instinct radiating from the human on top of her. It was suffocating, but it was also the only thing anchoring her to reality. I am intact," she managed to choke out. "Stay down," Damon ordered. He pulled his sidearm, a heavy kinetic slug thrower that looked barbaric next to the sleek Sarathian aesthetic. Above them, the air filled with a terrifying mechanical shriek. Damon risked a glance over the top of the granite slab. The newsbots, floating, spherical cameras that had been hovering around the perimeter, were transforming. Their casings split open, revealing spindly mechanical limbs and rapid-fire energy repeaters. They were not reporting the news. They were the hit squad. "Assassin droids!" Damon yelled. 3 of the machines swiveled toward their position. Red targeting lasers swept across the dust-choked air. "Move!" Damon grabbed Saris by the wrist. They scrambled backward, staying low. Plasma bolts chewed into the granite column where they had been a second before, sending sprays of molten rock hissing into the air. Damon fired back. His aim was disciplined and brutal. Bang! Bang! One droid exploded in a shower of sparks. Bang! Another spun out of control, crashing into the audience. "We need to get to the VIP extraction route," Damon shouted. "The East Corridor." They ran. Saris was surprisingly fast, her organic armor shifting to allow her greater range of motion. She did not stumble in her heels. She moved with a predatory fluidity that matched Damon's tactical sprint. They burst through the double doors at the side of the stage, spilling into the service corridor. The sounds of the massacre faded slightly behind the heavy blast doors, but the alarms were blaring, a dual-tone siren that signaled a catastrophic hull breach. Damon slammed his hand against the panel for the security bulkhead, punching in his override code. "Access denied." The computer chirped cheerfully. "Damn it!" Damon punched the panel again. "Authorization Alpha 9. Open. Access denied. Lockdown initiated." They locked us out, Damon realized, his blood running cold. This isn't just an assassination, man, it's a trap. Someone inside the network cut my clearance. Saris leaned against the wall, her silver skin pulsing with a rapid, erratic light. She looked at the panel, then at her own wrist. "Move aside," she commanded. "What?" "We need a heavy cutter to—" "I said move." She stepped forward and raised her left wrist. The flesh there seemed to part, revealing a shimmering crystalline interface embedded directly into her radial nerve. She pressed the interface against the human computer panel. Violet light flared through the circuitry of the door lock. The panel sparked, smoked, and then the heavy steel doors hissed open. Damon stared at her. "You just hacked a Coalition military-grade lock with your arm." Saris pulled her wrist back, the skin sealing over the crystal seamlessly. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "It is a standard diplomatic interface. Your encryption is on quaint. You and I have different definitions of quaint, princess. Let's go." They sprinted down the long, curving corridor. The station shuddered around them. Secondary explosions were rocking the hull now. The floor tilted, 15 degrees, then 20. The artificial gravity was failing. Damon's comms bead crackled to life. It was a chaotic mess of voices. Target is loose. Seal the sector. Hale has her. Kill them both. Damon froze. He stopped so abruptly Saris nearly ran into him. What is it? She whispered, sensing his spike of pure dread. He tapped the bead, listening. Hale. This is Gorman, the voice came through, calmer now. Bring the asset to safe room 4. Do not go to the docks. I repeat, safe room 4. We have a team waiting to secure her. Damon looked at the corridor signage. Safe room 4 was a dead end, a reinforced box. If he took her there, they would be trapped. The other voice on the channel, the one that had said kill them both, had sounded suspiciously like Gorman too. Damon looked at Saris. She was watching him, her black eyes searching his face. She didn't need to hear the comms. She could feel his realization. They are lying to you, she whispered. Yeah, Damon said, holstering his weapon and drawing a fresh magazine. They are... Damon ignored the order. He grabbed Saris's hand again. We are not going to the safe room. We are going to the pods. He dragged her toward a maintenance hatch labeled Emergency Egress. Hale, Gorman's voice barked. You are violating direct orders. Turn around. Go to hell, Damon muttered, ripping the comms bead from his ear and crushing it under his boot. They burst into the pod bay. It was a cavernous, circular room lined with egg-shaped escape vessels. Most were already launching, firing away into the void as panic spread through the station. Only one remained in the far cradle. Damon shoved Saris toward it. Get in. She scrambled into the cramped cockpit. It was designed for 4 humans, or 2 large Sarathians. It smelled of stale air and lubricant. Damon jumped in after her, his shoulder slamming into the doorframe. He winced, a sharp pain shooting down his arm, but he forced the manual lever down. The hatch sealed with a thud. Damon threw himself into the pilot's seat. His fingers flew across the manual controls, bypassing the flight computer that was trying to lock them down. Launch sequence initiated. The automated voice droned. Outside the viewport, the bay doors opened. Hold on, Damon yelled. The explosive bolts fired. The pod was kicked out of the station like a bullet from a gun. The G-force slammed them back against the crash webbing. Silence. The roar of the station vanished, replaced by the hum of the pod's life support. Through the rear view screen, they watched Helios crown recede, and then they watched it burn. A series of explosions, too rhythmic and precise to be accidental, walked their way along the station's docking ring. The structural integrity failed. The massive donut-shaped structure buckled, twisting in silence as atmosphere vented into space, crystallizing instantly into glittering clouds of ice. Saris stared at the screen, her hand pressed over her mouth. Thousands of people, her delegation, the human staff, gone. She spun on Damon, her bioluminescence flaring a violent, angry red. You did this, she screamed, her composure finally shattering. The sheer psychic force of her accusation hit Damon like a physical slap. This was a human trap. Your admiral spoke of peace while his soldiers planted bombs. Damon unbuckled his harness and spun his chair around to face her. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his scar, but his eyes were hard. My admiral is vaporized. Did you miss that part? He was a sacrifice, Saris countered, her voice trembling with rage and grief. To start the war again. Your people cannot stand the idea of peace. You live for conflict. My people? Damon laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Lady, half the comms chatter I heard before I tossed my earpiece was using Sarathian military encryption. You think those droids were coalition tech? They were hybrid. This was a joint effort. Liar, Saris hissed, her tendrils flaring out. You are trying to confuse me. I can feel your deception. You are feeling my fear, Damon shouted back. Because I am terrified. We are floating in a tin can in the middle of nowhere, and both our governments just tried to turn us into space dust, so save the royal indignation for someone who gives a damn. The silence that followed was heavy and breathing. They stared at each other, chests heaving, the small space charged with adrenaline and hatred. Then the lights flickered. The pod lurched violently to the port side. The artificial gravity generator groaned. What now? Damon growled, turning back to the console. Alarms started blaring. The proximity sensor was screaming. Damon looked at the forward viewport. What the hell is that? Space ahead of them was not empty. It was warping. The stars were bending, stretching into long streaks of light. A massive gravitational well had appeared out of nowhere. Not a black hole, but something artificial, something hungry. It was pulling them in. The navigation display flashed red. Anomaly detected. Unknown mass. Collision imminent. It's a tractor beam, Damon said, fighting the stick. But it's too strong. Saris looked out the window. Her anger vanished, replaced by a cold, crawling awe. That is not a tractor beam, she whispered. Looming out of the distortion was a structure. It was ancient, a skeletal megastructure of dark, jagged metal and purple energy that didn't appear on any star chart in existence. It was vast, easily the size of a moon, with spires that twisted in impossible geometries. We are off course, Damon said, his voice tight. We are way off course. Can you steer away? Saris asked, clutching the webbing. Damon pulled back on the yoke with both hands, his biceps straining. The pod shuddered, metal groaning under the stress. No, he gritted out. It's got us. The pod tumbled. The view of the stars vanished, swallowed by the gaping maw of the alien station. Darkness engulfed them, broken only by the strobing red light of the collision alarm. Brace for impact, Damon yelled. He reached out blindly, his hand finding hers in the dark. He didn't know why he did it. Maybe instinct. Maybe he just didn't want to die alone. Saris didn't pull away. She squeezed his hand back, her grip surprisingly strong, her skin cool and smooth. The pod screamed as it hit the atmosphere of the anomaly. And then the world went white. The escape pod did not fly so much as it was digested. The universe outside the reinforced viewport had ceased to be a void of stars and silence. It had become a kaleidoscope of violent fractal light, a tunnel of shifting geometries that defied the laws of physics Damon Hale had spent 20 years memorizing. The pod rattled like a pebble in a blender, the hull groaning under gravitational stresses that torqued the metal frame until the rivets screamed. Damon fought the yoke with his good arm, his teeth grit so hard he thought he might shatter a molar. The flight computer was dead, fried by the electromagnetic surge of the anomaly. He was flying on instinct and adrenaline, wrestling a falling brick through a hurricane. Hang on, Damon roared over the deafening shudder of the chassis. Beside him, Princess Saris was silent. She was pressed back into the crash webbing, her silver skin drained to a dull, ashen gray. Her eyes were squeezed shut, her hands clutching the harness straps with white-knuckled force. She was not just feeling the G-force. She was feeling the tunnel. To her empathic senses, this transport stream was not just energy. It was a screaming torrent of ancient, alien intent. The tunnel spat them out. 1 second, they were spinning through a corridor of light. The next, they were in real space. But it was a graveyard. Looming in front of them was an ancient ring station, a megastructure so old it had partially fossilized, merging with the jagged, iron-rich asteroid it orbited. "We are coming in too hot," Damon shouted. He slammed the thrusters into reverse burn. The pod bucked violently. The retro rockets fired, turning the descent from a fatal impact into a controlled crash. They slammed through a brittle containment field and skidded across the deck of a colossal hangar bay. Sparks showered the viewport like fireworks. Metal screeched against stone-hard biomatter. The pod spun 3 times, smashing through a row of petrified alien growths that looked like calcified trees, before finally slamming into a bulkhead and coming to a shuddering halt. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Smoke filled the cabin. The emergency lighting bathed them in a strobing crimson wash. Damon coughed, the movement sending a jagged spike of agony through his left shoulder. He looked down. His arm hung at a wrong angle, dislocated, probably some torn ligaments. He let out a low, hissing breath through his teeth. "Princess," he rasped. Saris unbuckled her harness with trembling fingers. She leaned forward and retched, though nothing came up but bile. She gasped for air, her head tendrils drooping flat against her skull. "The noise," she whispered, her voice thin and brittle. "It is everywhere." Damon kicked the manual release for the hatch. It blew outward with a pneumatic hiss. He unbuckled and stumbled out, his boots ringing on the deck. He reached back in with his good hand, grabbing Saris by the forearm to help her out. She felt cold, her bioluminescence dimmed to a faint, erratic pulse. "We need to move," Damon said, scanning the hangar. "If that crash didn't kill us, the life support failing might." They stumbled away from the smoking pod. The hangar was immense, a cathedral of shadows. The walls were not plated metal but lined with strange, ribbed growths, petrified biometal that looked like the ribcage of a leviathan. Damon found a flat ridge of stone and slumped against it. He looked at his shoulder, then at Saris. "I am going to need a minute," he said, sweat beading on his forehead. "And possibly a shot of whiskey, if you packed any in that fancy dress." Saris looked at him, her obsidian eyes struggling to focus. She took a deep breath, centering herself, pushing the psychic echo of the station to the back of her mind. She saw the angle of his arm. "Your shoulder," she noted. "Yeah. It is out of socket." Damon grimaced. "I need to put it back. You might want to look away. This part is not dignified. I have seen injuries before." "Sergeant," she said, her voice gaining a fraction of its usual steel. "Do not patronize me. Suit yourself." Damon braced his back against the wall. He gripped his left wrist with his right hand, took a sharp breath, and yanked upward while twisting his body. There was a wet, sickening pop. Damon let out a strangled shout that echoed in the vast emptiness, his vision graying out for a second. He slumped forward, panting, the joint back in place but throbbing with a dull, sickening heat. He ripped a strip of fabric from the hem of his ruined dress uniform jacket and tied his arm against his chest, improvising a crude sling. He looked up at her, forcing a tight, pained grin. "So, this is not exactly the romantic getaway I had planned for the weekend. The brochure promised a beach." Saris stared at him. She was surrounded by the ghosts of a dead civilization, trapped on a derelict station light years from home, with a man who had fought to destroy her people, and he was making jokes. "You are absurd," she said, though the corner of her mouth twitched. "It keeps the panic down," Damon replied. He nodded at the cavernous space around them. "Can you breathe okay?" "The air feels thin." Saris raised her wrist. Her interface glowed, analyzing the atmospheric composition. "Oxygen levels are at 70%. Breathable, but low. The temperature is dropping." She closed her eyes and extended her hand. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin flared brighter, shifting from a dim blue to a warm, radiant gold. From the gauntlet of her armor, a small cloud of spores released, rapidly expanding into a localized atmospheric bubble. It pushed the stale, dead air away, replacing it with a scent that reminded Damon of ozone and rain. My armor can synthesize a localized environment field, she explained. It will keep us warm and oxygenated as long as you stay close. Damon looked at the glowing field, then at her. Practical. I like it. He pushed himself off the wall, swaying slightly. All right, Your Highness. Here's the situation. We are stranded. We have no comms, no ship, and no idea where we are. But we are alive. He looked her in the eye. I know you don't trust me. I know you think this was a human trap. But right now, if we don't work together, we are going to die on this rock. So I am proposing a truce. We survive first. We argue about politics if we make it out. Deal? Sarah studied him. She could feel the pain radiating from his shoulder, a constant dull throb. Beneath that, she felt a grim determination, a soldier's resolve to keep her alive, not because she was a princess, but because she was his charge. She nodded slowly. Deal. They began to walk. The station was a labyrinth. It did not seem to have been built so much as grown. The corridors were triangular, sloping upward in dizzying spirals. The lighting came from deep within the walls, a faint amber pulsation that seemed to track their movement. And the station was shifting. Damon noticed it first. He glanced back the way they had come and stopped. The corridor behind them, which had been a straight shot to the hangar, was now curved. A door they had passed 2 minutes ago was gone. Don't look back, Damon muttered. What? The architecture, he said, gesturing with his head. It rearranges itself when you aren't looking, like a puzzle box. Just keep your eyes forward. As they ventured deeper, the physics of the place began to fray. They entered a large, spherical chamber where the gravity plating had failed in erratic patches. One moment, Damon was walking on the deck. The next, he was floating. He flailed, his boots losing purchase, drifting upward. Whoa! Saris, whose armor had small micro-thrusters for zero-gravity maneuvering, caught his ankle. She pulled him down, but the momentum swung them both into the center of the room where the gravity was null. They collided softly, drifting in the center of the chamber. Damon's good hand instinctively grabbed her waist to stabilize them. Saris's hands came up to rest on his chest. For a moment, the danger of the station faded. They were suspended in silence, face to face. Damon was acutely aware of the texture of her armor under his palm, warm, vibrating with that strange organic life. He looked at her face, inches from his own. Up close, the alien features that usually looked so severe were softer. He could see the intricate fractal patterns of her bioluminescence tracing the line of her jaw. Saris felt the sudden spike in his heart rate. It wasn't fear. It was a startled physical awareness. She felt the heat of his hand through her armor, a rugged human warmth that was starkly different from the cool precision of her own kind. Awkward, Damon muttered, his voice echoing in the quiet. Sorry. 0G is not my natural habitat. Saris did not let go immediately. We are stable, she said softly. The moment hung there, fragile and strange. Then, the gravity generators flickered back to life. They dropped 3 feet to the floor, landing in a clumsy tangle of limbs. Damon groaned, jarring his shoulder again. I hate this place. They scrambled up, dusting themselves off, neither mentioning the lingering sensation of the contact. They pushed forward until they reached what looked like a nerve center. It was a vast, circular room dominated by a floating lattice of crystalline energy keys. The console was dormant, covered in centuries of dust, but the keys hummed with potential. It's a control node, Saris said, approaching it. She reached out with her empathic sense, The machine responded. The keys lit up with a soft violet hue. It reacts to psionic pressure. It was built for a telepathic species. Damon stepped up beside her. He looked at the base of the console. There was a port there, a standard data jack, but ancient, or universal. He plugged his neural interface lead from his wrist into the port. "It is not just psionic," he said, frowning as data scrolled across his retinal display. "It is reading my cybernetics too. Look." As they both connected, Saris with her mind, Damon with his tech, the room roared to life. Holographic displays erupted from the floor, showing a star map of the galaxy as it had looked 10,000 years ago. "Two keys," Damon murmured, "one for the mind, one for the machine." This was not built by Sarathians or humans. Saris realized, her eyes wide. It requires both to function fully. Damon looked at her. A third species. Someone who figured out the balance a long time ago. They disconnected, the revelation hanging heavy between them. They were fighting a war over territory that had once belonged to gods. They took a break in a small alcove off the control room to rest and let Damon's painkillers kick in. The silence stretched, but this time it wasn't hostile. It was the exhausted silence of two survivors. Saris watched him as he adjusted his sling. Her shields were down, her exhaustion making it hard to filter the ambient emotions. Without meaning to, she brushed against his mind. She didn't see thoughts, but she felt flashes. A memory. Damon standing in a crater, dust choking the air. A woman holding a child, both still, both gone. The weight of a metal being pinned to his chest, heavy, cold, feeling like a brand of shame. The overwhelming, crushing sensation of helplessness masked by rage. She gasped softly, the intensity of his grief hitting her like a wave. Damon's head snapped up. He saw the look in her eyes, the pity, the horror. He knew that look. "Get out of my head," he snapped, his voice sharp as a whip crack. Saris recoiled. I did not intend to—" "Don't give me that," Damon growled, pushing himself to his feet. "You are reading me, spying. Is that how you win negotiations, digging through people's trauma? It is not spying." Saris stood up too, her defensive anger flaring. "You broadcast your pain like a beacon. Do you think I want to feel that? Do you think I want to feel the ghosts you carry? Then stop looking," Damon shouted. "You don't know me. You don't know what I have done. I know your people built weapons that tore entire stars apart," Saris yelled back, the frustration of the last day boiling over. "I know you burned the agricultural moons of Korra. I know you preach peace while building dreadnoughts. And I know your empire enslaves primitive species for their own protection," Damon countered, stepping closer. "I know you glassed the colonies on the outer rim because they wouldn't bow to your golden throne." They stood chest to chest, breathing hard, the accusations hanging in the air like smoke. The hatred was there, the ancient, taught hatred of their respective flags. But beneath it, they were just two tired people in a dark room. Damon's shoulders sagged, the anger drained out of him, leaving him hollow. "I am tired, Saris," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I am just so tired." Saris looked at him. She saw the gray in his stubble, the lines of exhaustion around his eyes. She felt the truth of his words. He wasn't a monster. He was a ruin, just like her. "I am sorry," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. Sarathian royals did not apologize. I should not have looked. It was a violation. Damon rubbed the back of his neck with his good hand. He let out a long sigh. "Maybe we are both just tired of being weapons." The sentence hung there. It was the first true thing either of them had said about the war. Maybe. Saris whispered. The mood shifted. The animosity didn't vanish, but the sharp edges had been filed down. We should check the data archive we found on the map, Damon said, changing the subject. If this station was active recently, the logs will be there. They moved to the archive room. It was a library of light, columns of data scrolling in the air. Damon sat at a terminal, his fingers flying over the holographic interface, translating the ancient code with his military decryption software. Sarah stood beside him, using her royal clearance codes to cross-reference the signatures. Here, Damon said, pointing to a file. Look at the timestamp. Saris leaned in. That is, 3 days ago. 3 days before the ceremony. Damon confirmed. This station received a transmission from Helios Crown. He opened the file. It was a packet of data, shield frequencies, patrol routes, security blind spots. Someone sent the blueprints for the assassination to this station, Damon said grimly. They used this place as a staging ground. Sarah scanned the encryption tags at the bottom of the file. Her blood ran cold. There are 2 signatures, she said, her voice trembling. One is a Sarathian Regent code, level 1 clearance, and the other, Damon said, pointing to a jagged alphanumeric string, is a Coalition Admiral's command key. They looked at each other. The proof was irrefutable. Your Regent and my Admiral, Damon said, working together. They staged the attack. They wanted the peace to fail so they could start the war again. Saris felt sick. Regent Varen, her uncle, the man who had raised her after her parents died, he had sold them out. They need to be stopped, she said, her voice hard. We need to get off this rock first, Damon reminded her. But yeah, if we get back, we are going to burn them down. The revelation gave them a new focus. They weren't just survivors anymore, they were conspirators. The tension in the air shifted from hostility to a sort of grim camaraderie as they walked toward the station's power core, trying to find a way out. Damon tried to break the heavy silence. So, he said, gesturing to the hallway, in Sarathian culture, when you walk with a lady, is the male supposed to walk in front to catch the bullets, or behind to admire the view? Saris blinked, caught off guard. In Sarathian culture, the female leads because she is the more lethal hunter. The male walks beside her to carry her supplies. Damon laughed, a genuine rasping sound. Of course. So I am the pack mule. That tracks. He tried to perform a formal Sarathian bow he had seen in vids, a hand over chest slight tilt, but with his sling, he looked like a broken marionette. I am deeply honored, Mistress Hunter. He deadpanned. Saris actually laughed. It was a musical sound, like chimes. You look ridiculous. Sergeant, your form is terrible. You look like a drunken aquatic fowl. Well, I am doing my best. Damon grinned. She felt a strange warmth in her chest. She decided to try a human gesture she had observed. She reached out her hand for a handshake. Damon looked at her hand, then reached out. But Saris, misjudging the distance and the angle, lunged forward too enthusiastically. One of her head tendrils whipped forward and nearly poked him in the eye. Whoa! Damon jerked his head back. Easy. Tiger, are you trying to blind me? I was attempting a handshake, Saris defended, her cheeks flushing a deeper violet. It is a gesture of trust. That was an assassination attempt, Damon teased. You nearly lobotomized me. Is that what you call weaponized flirting? Saris froze. Flirting? I was not flirting, she stammered, looking away, her bioluminescence flaring bright pink. I was engaging in cross-species cultural exchange. Uh-huh, Damon smirked. Keep telling yourself that, princess. The banter felt dangerous. It was light, but beneath it ran a current of something else. They were two people who shouldn't be laughing together, finding comfort in the dark. They reached a chasm. A massive section of the station had collapsed, leaving a 50-foot gap across a bridge that spanned a reactor shaft. The drop was endless, fading into a blue-white energy mist miles below. The bridge itself was tilted, slick with condensation. "We have to cross," Damon said. He went first, testing the footing. The metal groaned. He reached back for her. "Give me your hand." Saris took it. Her grip was tight. They inched across the slick metal. Halfway across, the bridge shifted with a metallic scream. Saris slipped. Her boots lost traction on the wet plating. She slid toward the edge. "Saris!" Damon didn't think about his shoulder. He lunged, grabbing her forearm with his good hand. He slammed his knees into the grating, anchoring them. He pulled her hard, swinging her body back onto the center of the walkway. She slammed into him, her chest against his. He wrapped his arm around her waist to steady her. For a second, they didn't move. They were breathing in sync, adrenaline flooding their systems. Saris's empathic senses were wide open. She felt the wave of protective instinct crashing off him, pure, unadulterated terror at the thought of her falling. She looked up. His face was inches away. His dark eyes were dilated, the pupils swallowing the iris. She felt her own heart hammering against her ribs. She felt the strange, magnetic pull to lean in, to close the gap. Damon looked at her lips. He saw them part slightly. The air between them crackled. Then he pulled back, clearing his throat and stepping away, though he kept a steadying hand on her elbow. We should keep moving," he said, his voice rougher than usual. Saris smoothed her armor, her hands trembling. "Yes, we should." She glanced at him as they reached the other side. "Your pupils are dilated," she said, trying to regain her composure with science. "In humans, that indicates physiological arousal or extreme fear." "It was the fear," Damon said quickly. "Definitely the fear." Saris touched her cheek. Her skin was glowing so brightly she could see her reflection in the metal walls. "And you are glowing like a distress flare," Damon pointed out. "Bioluminescent involuntary response," Saris said stiffly. "Adrenaline." "Right," Damon said. "Adrenaline." Neither of them believed it. They found the exit in the deepest sector of the station. It was not a docking bay, but a gate, a massive ring-shaped teleportation device that predated both their civilizations. "It's dormant," Damon said, examining the power conduits. "But the destination coordinates, they are locked onto the Cerathian capital." Saris stepped up to the control pedestal. "It requires an empathic key to align the frequency." "I can do it." Damon nodded. "I will handle the power flow. The conduits are fried. I will have to bypass the safeties to get enough juice into the ring." "It is dangerous," Saris warned. "If the feedback hits you, I will be fine," Damon said, grabbing a pair of insulated cables. "Just open the door, Princess." Saris placed her hands on the pedestal. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The station woke up. It didn't just turn on, it spoke. As the energy surged through the gate, the lights in the room flickered in a stroboscopic rhythm. A vision slammed into both of them, projected directly into their minds. Fire, burning fleets, a galaxy consumed by war, Regent Varen standing on a balcony watching a world burn, Admiral Pike shaking hands with a shadow. Then, the image shifted. Damon and Saris, standing back to back in the center of a storm, a flag that was half human, half Cerathian. Peace, rebuilding. The vision ended as abruptly as it began. Saris gasped, staggering back. Damon dropped the cables, sparks showering around his boots. "Did you see that?" Damon asked, his eyes wide. "It was a projection," Saris whispered. "A probability calculation. The station. It is predicting the future. It showed us stopping them, Damon said. It showed us choosing, Saris corrected. The gate was open now. A swirling vortex of blue energy filled the ring. The hum was deafening. Saris looked at the gate, then at Damon. If we go through there, we go back to the wolf's den. My uncle will be waiting. They will try to kill us. Damon checked the charge on his sidearm. He adjusted his sling. He looked at her. And this time, there was no hesitation, no guilt, just resolve. Let them try, he said. He held out his hand. Ready to go home. Your Highness? Saris looked at his hand, the hand of a human, scarred and calloused. She took it. Ready. Sergeant. Together. They stepped into the light. The transition was not a walk through a door. It was a molecular deconstruction. One moment, Damon Hale was standing in the dank, vibrating air of the ancient alien station, his hand clasped in Princess Saris's cool grip. The next, the universe dissolved into a tunnel of screaming blue light that felt like it was stripping the skin from his bones. When reality reassembled itself, the air smelled of ozone and crushed lilacs. Damon stumbled, his boots skidding on a polished surface that was smoother than glass. His knees buckled, the nausea of teleportation hitting him like a physical punch to the gut. He gasped, dropping to one knee, his injured shoulder screaming in protest. Steady. Sergeant. Saris's voice came from above him. It was composed but breathless. Damon looked up. They were no longer in a ruin. They were standing on a raised platform in the center of a crystalline rotunda so bright it made his eyes water. The walls were not metal but translucent, growing crystal that soared upward into a vaulted ceiling open to the sky. And the sky was filled with monsters. Or at least, that was Damon's first instinct. Sarath Prime was a world of verticality. Floating cities drifted through the clouds like massive, glittering jellyfish, tethered to the ground by gravity lifts that looked like threads of light. Bioluminescent forests spiraled up the sides of mile-high spires, and the air was thick with flying creatures, six-winged drakes and shimmering skimmers that wove between the architecture. Movement at the periphery of his vision snapped Damon back to soldier mode. Secure the perimeter, a voice boomed in the guttural Sarathian high tongue. Doors around the rotunda slid open with a hiss. 24 figures in heavy ceremonial armor poured into the room. They held long, energized pikes leveled directly at Damon's chest. Drop the weapon, one of the guards roared, his helmet amplifier distorting the sound into a growl. Damon raised his good hand, slowly. He was still wearing the sling. His sidearm was holstered at his hip. He was surrounded, injured, and on a hostile planet. Do not shoot. Saris stepped in front of him, her organic gown flaring with a sharp, authoritative white light. He is with me. The captain of the guard, a towering Sarathian with deep scarring on his exposed chin, hesitated. He looked at the princess, then at the human crouching behind her. Your Highness, the captain said, lowering his pike but keeping his eyes locked on Damon. We were told you were dead. The human broadcasts claimed. The broadcasts are wrong. Saris cut him off, her voice ringing with the imperial tone she had been trained in since birth. This man is Sergeant Damon Hale of the Coalition. He saved my life. He is not a prisoner. He is my personal guest. The captain narrowed his eyes. He is a human soldier in a weaponized zone. Protocol dictates you obey your princess, Captain, Saris snapped. Her head tendrils flared, broadcasting a wave of cold, hard command that Damon could almost feel as a drop in temperature. If you touch him, you answer to me. Stand down. The tension in the room was brittle enough to snap. Damon watched the guards' fingers twitch on their triggers. He knew that look. They wanted to kill him. Peace treaty or not, he was the enemy standing in their holy sanctum. The captain slowly signaled his squad to lower their weapons. "As you command, Your Highness," the captain said, though the words tasted of bile. "But he will be disarmed, and he will be watched." Damon slowly unbuckled his holster with his right hand and slid it across the floor. "Fair enough," Damon said, his voice raspy. "I was getting tired of carrying it anyway." The political machine of the Sarathian Empire moved faster than a hyperdrive engine. Within hours of their return, the narrative was spun, sanitized, and broadcast to the galaxy. The official story from the Sarathian Council was simple. Rogue human extremists had attacked Helios' crown. The brave Princess Ceres had survived through her own ingenuity. The peace was fragile, but the Empire would be the bigger person and maintain the ceasefire. Damon watched the news feeds from the window of his quarters. The room they had put him in was luxurious, a sprawling suite of silk tapestries and floating furniture. But it was a cell. The door was locked. 2 guards stood outside at all times. On the holographic screen, a human news anchor was shouting the Coalition's version of events. Imperial fanatics had tried to assassinate Admiral Pike. The princess was being held as a political hostage. "Lies," Damon muttered, turning off the screen. "Just layers of lies." He turned to look at the room. It was too quiet. He missed the hum of the ship. He missed the chaos of the alien station. Most of all, he missed Ceres. Since they had arrived, she had been swept away by a tide of advisors, stylists, and politicians. He had seen her only on the screens, standing on a balcony, waving to a sea of silver-skinned citizens, looking regal and untouchable. She was the bridge between worlds again. The symbol. The door chimed. "Enter," Damon said. The door slid open, and a Sarathian male shuffled in carrying a tray. He was slender, wearing the simple gray robes of a servant, and his head tendrils were short and nervous. "Greetings, honored guest," the servant said, bowing so low his nose nearly touched the floor. "I am Crix. I have been assigned to attend to your biological needs." Damon looked at the tray. On it was a plate of something that looked like purple tubers, and they were definitely writhing. "My biological needs are questioning this meal." "Crix," Damon said, peering at the plate. "Is that moving?" "It is fresh," Crix said, beaming. "Gag root, rich in proteins. It must be eaten while it struggles, or the flavor sours." "Right," Damon said, poking a tuber with a fork. It hissed at him. "I think I will pass on the combat dining. Do you have anything that is already dead? Maybe something toasted?" Crix looked horrified. "Dead food? Like carrion? Just bread." "Crix, do you have bread? Grain? I shall inquire with the xenobiology department," Crix said, tapping a datapad seriously. Damon sighed, rubbing his face. "I am dying here. Crix." Crix dropped the tray. It clattered loudly, the tubers scurrying for freedom across the polished floor. "Medical emergency!" Crix shrieked, tapping his comms badge frantically. "The human is expiring! Prepare the resuscitation chamber! No!" Damon waved his hands. "No! Crix, stop! It is a figure of speech. I am not actually dying. It means I am bored." Crix froze, his hand hovering over his badge. "You are not expiring?" "No. But you said you were dying." "It is a metaphor," Damon explained, feeling a headache building behind his eyes. "Humans use them, like shooting the breeze." Crix looked terrified. "Why do you shoot the wind? Is the atmosphere hostile on Earth?" Damon stared at him. Then, despite the situation, he let out a short, dry chuckle. "You know what, Crix? You are all right. Just get me some water, and maybe catch my lunch before it escapes under the sofa." Later that evening, the door chimed again. This time, the override code was keyed in before Damon could answer. Sarah slipped inside. She looked exhausted. The glowing organic gown had been replaced by a heavy, ceremonial robe of stiff, gold-threaded fabric. Her head tendrils drooped with fatigue, and the bioluminescence of her skin was dim. She leaned against the closed door, closing her eyes for a moment. "If I have to shake one more hand or bless one more baby," Saris murmured, "I am going to scream until the crystal spires shatter." Damon sat up on the floating couch. "Rough day at the office." "Princess?" Saris opened her eyes and looked at him. A small, genuine smile broke through her royal mask. "You have no idea. Sergeant, the Council of Matriarchs spent 3 hours debating the exact shade of silver I should wear for the memorial service. They believe starlight pale suggests weakness, while moon iron suggests aggression. And what did you choose?" "I told them I would wear whatever was clean," Saris said, walking over to join him. They nearly fainted. Damon laughed. He moved his legs to give her space on the couch. She sat down, not with the grace of a princess, but with the heavy flop of a tired woman. "How is your prison?" she asked, looking around the opulent room. "The service is attentive," Damon said. "Crix tried to have me hospitalized because I used a metaphor, and my lunch tried to attack me, but the pillows are nice." Saris chuckled. "Crix is diligent. He takes his duties very seriously." They sat in silence for a moment. It was comfortable, a stark contrast to the noise outside. "They are keeping us apart," Damon said quietly. "I know," Saris replied, her gaze hardening. "My uncle, Regent Varen, says it is for your safety. He says the public is not ready to see a human standing freely in the palace." "Do you believe him?" Saris hesitated. Then she shook her head. "No. I think he is afraid of what you represent. You are a variable he cannot control." She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face. "I missed you today, Damon. Standing up there, listening to them lie about the war. I kept looking for you in the shadows." "I was watching," Damon said. "You looked like a queen. I felt like a fraud. We are going to fix it. Saris, we have the data key. We know about the conspiracy." Saris nodded. "We need to access the royal archives. The key we found on the alien station has a partial encryption match with the old pre-war logs. If we can link Varen's signature to the transmission sent to Helios Crown, we have him." "When?" "Tomorrow," Saris said. "I have scheduled a cultural exchange tour of the palace grounds. You will accompany me. Crix will come too, to make it look official. While he is distracting the librarian with questions about human dietary habits, you and I will slip into the restricted section." Damon grinned. "A heist. Now you are speaking my language." The royal gardens of Sarath Prime were a marvel of bioengineering. It was night, and the floating light flowers were in full bloom. They were massive, lily-like blossoms that hovered in the air, untethered to the ground, drifting on magnetic currents. They glowed with soft pulses of neon blue, pink, and amber, casting the garden in a dreamlike, underwater hue. Saris and Damon walked along a glass path that wound through the drifting petals. Crix was following 10 paces behind, muttering into a datapad about the caloric density of human snack foods. "It is beautiful," Damon admitted. He reached out to touch a drifting petal. It felt like warm velvet. "Propaganda told us this place was a fortress of skulls," Damon said softly. "They said Sarathians paved their streets with the bones of their enemies." Saris let out a soft breath. and our propaganda said Earth was a smog-choked ruin where humans ate their own young to survive. Damon looked at her. Well, the smog part is true, but we usually prefer pizza to children. They stopped near a fountain where gravity flowed upward, the water cascading up into the sky to join a cloud bank. I expected you to be cruel, Damon confessed, looking at the water. When I was assigned to you, I thought I was guarding a monster, a cold, unfeeling psychic witch. Saris turned to him, the light of the flowers reflecting in her obsidian eyes. And I expected a brute, she said, a mindless trigger puller. Damon turned to face her. And now? He asked. Saris stepped closer. The space between them seemed to charge with static electricity. Her bioluminescence flared, a soft, inviting peach color. Now, she whispered, I see the man who gave his water ration to a wounded enemy soldier. I see the man who punched a superior officer to save a refugee. I see the man who pulled me out of the fire. She reached out and placed her hand flat against his chest, right over his heart. Sarathians sense emotions. Damon, she said softly, but sometimes physical touch tells a truer story. She closed her eyes. Your heart is racing, she murmured. It is beating 120 times a minute. Damon felt the heat of her palm through his dress uniform. He felt his breath catch in his throat. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to close the distance, to wrap his arms around her and forget the war, the conspiracy, and the galaxy. He looked at her lips. They were parted slightly. Saris, he started, his voice rough. She leaned in, just an inch. Her scent, ozone and rain filled his head. Damon's hand twitched at his side. He wanted this. God, he wanted this. But then he saw Crix in the distance, adjusting his robe. He saw the security drones hovering above the garden wall. He saw the trap they were standing in. If he kissed her now, he put a target on her back. He gently took her wrist and pulled her hand away from his chest. Damon stepped back, his jaw tight. We can't, he said, his voice sounding like gravel. Not here. Not while they are watching. Saris opened her eyes. She looked hurt, confusion flashing across her features before she masked it with royal poise. Of course, she said, her voice cooling instantly. You are right. It would be strategically unsound. She turned away, staring at the upward flowing water. Damon stood there, his heart still hammering, cursing his own discipline. He had done the right thing. He knew that. So why did it feel like he had just made the biggest mistake of his life? The archives were deep beneath the palace, a cavern of crystal data spires that hummed with the collective knowledge of the Empire. The plan worked better than it had any right to. Crix was currently engaging the head archivist in a heated debate about whether a sandwich constituted a structural violation of bread, leaving the rear access terminal unguarded. Damon slid into the alcove, Saris blocking the view with her wide, ceremonial skirts. He plugged the data key from the alien station into the terminal. His fingers flew across the interface. I am in, Damon whispered, bypassing the security subroutines. Hurry, Saris murmured, glancing over her shoulder. The archivist is losing patience with Crix. Damon navigated the ancient directory. He cross-referenced the transmission logs from Helios Crown with the Empire's internal comms network. Got it, he hissed. A holographic file materialized in the air between them. It was a fragmented audio log, tagged with a heavy encryption key. Damon cracked it. The voice of Regent Varen filled the small alcove. The timing must be precise. Admiral, the princess will be on the podium at 1400 hours. Ensure your drones are in position. The explosion must look like a failure of coalition security. A second voice, human and gravelly, Admiral Pike, responded. And the princess? She is collateral damage? Varen's voice was cold, devoid of any familial warmth. She is a sacrifice. A martyr is more useful to the Empire than a peace-loving girl. Her death will give me the mandate I need to scour your coalition from the stars. And then, we divide the spoils as agreed. Damon froze. He looked at Saris. She was staring at the hologram, her face drained of color. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. He knew. She whispered. He sent me there to die. He raised me. He sat by my bed when I was sick. And he planned to blow me into atoms for a land grab. Damon killed the hologram and pulled the drive. He grabbed Saris by the shoulders, turning her to face him. Saris, listen to me. He is not your family. Not anymore. He is a target. Saris looked up at him, her eyes brimming with tears she refused to shed. Hundreds of people. She choked out. My friends, my guard, dead, because of him. We are going to make him pay, Damon promised, his voice dark and lethal. But we have to get this evidence to the council. Before they could move, the lights in the archive turned red. A silent alarm had tripped. We need to go, Damon said. Now. They managed to slip back into the main corridor just as Crix came trotting back, looking triumphant. I have convinced the archivist that toast is merely cooked bread, Crix announced. Great job. Crix, Damon said, steering Saris toward the exit. Let's go celebrate, somewhere far away from here. The summons came an hour later. Regent Varen requested the princess's presence in his private study. Alone. Saris stood tall as she entered. Varen was sitting behind a massive desk of carved obsidian, sipping a cup of warm nectar. He looked every inch the benevolent uncle, silver hair neatly groomed, robes immaculate, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ah, Saris, he said smoothly. You look pale, my dear. Are you recovering well? I am well. Uncle, Saris said, remaining standing. Good, because we must discuss your future. Varen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the floating city. The attack on Helios Crown has left our people frightened. They need strength. They need stability. And frankly, my dear, your current association with the human bodyguard is causing confusion. He is my guest, Saris said stiffly. He is a distraction. Varen turned back to her. Which is why I have arranged a union for you. Saris felt her stomach drop. A union? Lord Kael has expressed a keen interest in bonding with you. He is a powerful ally. His fleet controls the manufacturing sector. A marriage between House Varenth and House Kael would solidify the Empire's resolve. Lord Kael? Saris asked, her voice rising. The man who called humans vermin in the Senate? The man who advocates for total war? He is a patriot, Varen corrected. And he offers stability. I will not do it, Saris said, her voice shaking with rage. I will not marry a warmonger to suit your political games. Varen's smile vanished. The mask dropped. You will, Saris. Because if you do not, I cannot guarantee the safety of your pet human. Saris went cold. Is that a threat? It is a reality. Varen stepped closer. Accidents happen. Saris, food poisoning, a fall from a balcony, a prisoner trying to escape and getting shot. It would be tragic if Sergeant Hale were to meet such a fate. He leaned in, his voice a hiss. Marry Kael. Distance yourself from the human. Show the galaxy you are a true Sarathian, or I will have him executed for espionage before the sun sets tomorrow. Saris stared at him. She saw the monster beneath the skin. She realized then that the recording was not just a betrayal. It was his nature. She thought of Damon. She thought of his laugh, his hand on her waist, the way he stood between her and the world. She could not let him die. "I need time," she whispered. "You have until the diplomatic reception tonight," Varen said, sitting back down. "Announce the engagement, then." Dismissed. The reception was a glittering nightmare. The grand hall was filled with the elite of Sarath Prime, nobles in shifting light gowns, military officers in polished armor, diplomats from neutral worlds. Music drifted through the air, ethereal and haunting. Damon stood at the edge of the room, stiff in his dress uniform. He had been allowed to attend only because Saris had insisted, but he was unarmed and watched by 4 guards. He scanned the room for Saris. She stood near the throne, wearing a gown of severe, dark iron gray. She looked like a statue. She wasn't glowing. She caught his eye across the room. She looked terrified. Damon frowned. Something was wrong. He started to move toward her, but the guards stepped in his path. "Stay in your zone. Human," one growled. Suddenly, the music cut out. The massive holographic screens that lined the walls, usually displaying abstract art, flickered. "Citizens of Sarath," a voice boomed over the speakers. It was Varen's voice, but projected with practiced gravity. "We have uncovered the truth of the Helios Crown tragedy." Damon froze. On the screens, grainy footage appeared. It showed a figure in a coalition uniform moving through the maintenance shafts of Helios Crown. The figure knelt by a power coupling and attached a device. The figure turned. It was Damon. Damon's jaw dropped. That is not me." The footage was a deep fake, perfect in every detail. It showed Damon arming the bomb, then smiling at the camera. A cold, malicious sneer that Damon had never made in his life. The room erupted in gasps. Hundreds of eyes turned toward Damon. The fear and hatred in the room spiked so high it was almost suffocating. "Treason!" someone shouted. "Assassin!" Guards seized Damon before he could react. Heavy gauntlets slammed him to the floor. An electric shock baton jammed into his spine, sending agony arcing through his nerves. "No!" Damon roared, struggling. "No, it is a lie. It is doctored footage." Saris ran forward. "Stop! This is false!" Regent Varen stepped onto the dais, looking sorrowful. "I am sorry, Saris," he said, his voice amplified for the crowd. "I know you trusted him, but the evidence is irrefutable. He used your trust to infiltrate our security. He is a saboteur." Saris looked at the screen, then at Varen. She saw the triumph in his eyes. If she defended Damon now, she would be branded a traitor too, and they would both die. Varen had checkmated her. Lord Kale stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on Saris's shoulder. "Do not look, my dear," Kale said smoothly. "It is over." Damon, pinned to the floor, looked up. He met Saris's eyes. "Tell them," he shouted. "Tell them what we found." Saris opened her mouth. She looked at Varen, who gave a subtle, warning nod toward the guards holding Damon. "One word," the nod said, "and they snap his neck right now." Saris closed her mouth. She trembled, her entire body shaking. "Take him away," Varen ordered. Damon watched her. He waited for her to scream, to fight, to use her authority. But she stood there, silent, frozen in Kale's grip. Damon felt something break inside him that was more painful than the shock baton. "Saris," he whispered. The guards hauled him up and dragged him out of the hall. The last thing he saw was Saris turning her face away, the light of her skin completely extinguished. The cell was a box of silence. Damon sat on the cold floor, his wrists shackled to the wall by energy cuffs. His lip was split, and his bad shoulder was throbbing with a renewed, grinding pain. But the physical pain was background noise. The real agony was the memory of her silence. "She let them take me," he whispered to the darkness. The energy barrier at the front of the cell shimmered. Saris appeared on the other side. She was still wearing the iron-gray dress. Her face was tear-streaked. "Damon," she said, her voice trembling. Damon didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here. Your Highness, you might catch treason. Please." Saris pressed her hand against the barrier. "They are listening. I can't. I couldn't speak. He would have killed you right there." "So this is better?" Damon looked up, his eyes cold and hard. "Letting me rot in a hole while your uncle spins his fairy tales?" "I am trying to save you," Saris hissed. "By marrying that fascist Kale?" Damon spat the words out. "Yeah, I heard the announcement on the way down. Congratulations. I hope you two are very happy." "Damon, stop." Saris's voice cracked. "Go away. Saris." Damon leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes. Maybe peace really was just a fantasy. Maybe we are exactly what they say we are. Enemies. Saris stared at him. She wanted to scream the truth. She wanted to shatter the barrier and hold him. But the camera in the corner blinked its red, unblinking eye. I will fix this," she whispered, though it sounded like a lie even to her. She turned and ran. She ran through the dungeon corridors, past the guards who sneered at her, up the stairs and into her private chambers. She dismissed Crix. She locked the door. She activated her privacy field. And then, Princess Saris of House Varenth collapsed. She fell to the floor, her heavy gown billowing around her like a shroud. She curled into a ball and sobbed, ugly, wrenching sobs that shook her entire frame. She had lost everything. Her family was a lie. Her government was a conspiracy. And the one person who truly saw her, the one person who made her feel real, hated her. She lay there for a long time, letting the grief scour her hollow. But as the tears dried, something else began to fill the empty space. It was cold. It was sharp. It was the same steel she had felt when she hacked the door on the station. She sat up. She wiped her face. Varen thought she was weak. He thought she was a pawn to be traded for a fleet. He thought that by threatening Damon, he could control her. He was wrong. Saris stood up. She walked to the mirror. Her reflection looked back, eyes red, face pale. She triggered her armor. The bioluminescent gown flowed over her skin, replacing the gray silk. She willed the light to change, not the soft peach of romance, not the white of diplomacy. Her skin turned a deep, burning crimson, the color of a huntress. "They want a war?" she whispered to the empty room. "I will give them a war." Regent Varen's private sanctum smelled of spiced smoke and ancient, unyielding ambition. The walls were lined with trophies from the border wars, fragments of coalition hulls, helmets of dead commanders, and shards of glassed planets encased in stasis fields. Princess Saris stood in the center of the room, her spine rigid. She wore her crimson armor, the color of a huntress, though she had dimmed the bioluminescence to a dull, threatening smolder. "I am done asking." "Uncle," Saris said, her voice devoid of the pleading tone she had used the day before. "I am demanding. You will release Sergeant Hale. You will retract the accusations. And you will tell the Council the truth about the Helios Crown attack." Varen sat behind his desk, studying a holographic map of the neutral zone. He did not look up. He merely swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "You demand?" Varen chuckled, a dry sound like dry leaves skittering on stone. "You are a child playing at governance. Saris, you speak of truth as if it is a jewel to be polished and displayed. Truth is a weapon. And right now, The lie is serving the Empire far better. He calls it a lie. Saris realized, her stomach turning. He admits it freely. The lie is inciting a war. Saris stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. We are on the brink of total mobilization. Millions will die, and billions will remember who their masters are. Varen countered, finally looking at her. His eyes were cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of empathy. Peace made us weak. Saris, it made us complacent. The humans were encroaching on our trade routes, polluting our culture with their chaotic democracy. They needed to be reminded of their place, and our people needed fear to remind them why they need a strong hand to lead them. He stood up, walking slowly around the desk. You are too soft to rule, my dear. Your mother had the same defect. She thought she could love the galaxy into submission. You see where that got her. Do not speak of her, Saris hissed, her head tendrils flaring red. I speak of reality, Varen said. And the reality is that Sergeant Hale is a loose end. His execution is scheduled for dawn. It will be a public event, a symbol of our resolve. Execution? Saris felt the blood drain from her face. You cannot. He is innocent. He is a human. Varen shrugged. Innocence is irrelevant. His death will restore order. It will solidify your union with Lord Kale, and it will secure the Empire's future. He stopped in front of her, his expression pitying. Go back to your chambers. Princess, put on your wedding dress, and let the adults handle the war. Saris stared at him. She reached out with her empathic senses, searching for a shred of guilt, a flicker of hesitation. There was nothing. Just a vast, cold void of arrogance. Peaceful negotiation was dead. The man standing in front of her was not her uncle. He was the enemy. I will go to my chambers, Saris said quietly. Good. Varen nodded, turning his back to her. Saris turned and walked out, but she did not go to her chambers to weep. She went to the service elevators. If Varen wanted a huntress, she would show him one. Leo was currently suspended upside down inside a ventilation turbine, cursing in 3 different languages. He was a palace engineer, a lanky Sarathian with grease-stained skin and a cynical view of royalty that usually got him in trouble. Hand me the hydro spanner, he shouted at his assistant. I am not your assistant, Leo. I am your princess, Leo yelped, banging his head against the turbine casing. He scrambled down the ladder, wiping grease onto his tunic. He looked at Saris, blinking his large, owl-like eyes. Your Highness, he stammered. I did not know you were inspecting the air ducts. I would have cleaned up. I am not inspecting, Saris said, cutting straight to the point. I need you to disable the security grid on the detention level. Sector 4. Leo stared at her. Sector 4? That is high security. That is where they keep the political prisoners and the really angry ex-wives of counselors. Why would you want to go there? I am breaking someone out, Saris said. Leo's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The human? The one on the news? The bomber? He is not a bomber. Leo, he is my friend, and they are going to execute him at dawn. Leo rubbed his face, smearing more grease across his forehead. You want to commit treason. Light treason. Just a little bit of overthrowing the government. Will you help me? Leo sighed heavily. Well, considering the alternative is Lord Kale running the Empire, and that man once tried to ban tinkering because he found gears aesthetically displeasing, yes, I am in, but we need a ride. Once we get him out, we cannot exactly take the royal shuttle. I have a contact, Saris said. Tana, Leo groaned. The smuggler, the one who stole the Chancellor's favorite pet lizard. She returned the lizard. Saris defended. Eventually. An hour later, they were huddled in a maintenance closet deep in the lower levels. A holographic projection of Tina flickered from a comms unit. Tina was a rogue, a Sarathian with broken head tendrils and a grin that spelled trouble. So, let me get this straight. Tina's voice crackled. You want to break into your own dungeon, kidnap your own bodyguard, and then smuggle him out of your own palace? When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous, Saris admitted, a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in her throat. It sounds like suicide, Tana corrected. I love it. I will have a skimmer waiting at the waste disposal chute in 40 minutes. Don't be late, and try not to get shot. I hate washing blood out of the upholstery. Saris cut the connection. She looked at Leo. Ready? Leo tapped his datapad. The cameras in Sector 4 are on a loop. You have a 10-minute window before the system realizes it is watching yesterday's footage. Go get your boy. Damon Hale was bored. He was also in significant pain, thirsty, and fairly certain he had a cracked rib. But mostly, he was bored. The Sarathian interrogator had spent the last 2 hours asking him the same 3 questions about coalition encryption keys. Damon had answered by listing the ingredients of a pepperoni pizza in descending order of importance. The interrogator, a humorless man with skin the color of slate, slapped the table. You will break, human, the interrogator hissed. Buddy. I have been married twice, Damon deadpanned, leaning back in his energy shackles. You do not know the meaning of the word break. The door to the interrogation cell hissed open. The interrogator spun around. Unauthorized entry is forbidden. Princess Saris strode into the room. She was wearing her full ceremonial armor, silver plate over crimson weave, her cape flowing behind her like a storm cloud. Her bioluminescence was blindingly bright, a harsh, authoritarian white. Leave us, Saris commanded. The interrogator hesitated. Your Highness, the regent gave strict orders. I said leave, Saris shouted, her voice echoing off the metal walls. She slammed her hand onto the table. This prisoner compromised my security detail. He endangered my life. I will conduct the final interrogation myself. Unless you believe you are more qualified to exact vengeance than a daughter of House Varenth? The interrogator paled. He looked at Damon, then at the furious princess. No, Your Highness. Of course not. He bowed and scurried out of the room, the door sealing behind him. Damon looked at her. He didn't smile. He didn't look relieved. He looked tired and wary. Came to watch the show, he asked, his voice rasping. Or did you bring a knife to finish the job yourself? Saris didn't speak. She waited until the lock light on the door turned red. Then she dropped the act. Her shoulders slumped. The blinding white light of her skin softened to a frantic, fearful pulse of violet. She rushed to the wall controls and keyed in a sequence with shaking hands. The energy shackles around Damon's wrists and ankles deactivated with a hum. Damon rubbed his wrists, staring at her. What are you doing? Saving you, Saris whispered. She grabbed his arm, pulling him up. We have to go. Now! Damon stood his ground, pulling his arm back. Wait, yesterday you let them drag me away. You stood there and said nothing. Now you are playing the hero. Is this another one of Varen's games? Is there a camera recording this escape attempt so he can shoot me in the hallway? No games. Damon, Saris said, her eyes pleading. I was a coward yesterday. I was afraid. But I am not afraid anymore. It is a setup. Varen and Pike planned everything, and they are going to kill you at dawn. She looked at the door. Please, she said, her voice cracking. Trust me one more time. Damon looked at her. He saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the way her hands were trembling, and this wasn't a game. She She was terrified, and she was here anyway. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Okay," he said. He grabbed a stun baton the interrogator had left on the table. "Lead the way, princess." They moved fast. The alarm didn't go off for another 4 minutes. When it did, the palace screamed, sirens wailed, lights turned to strobing crimson, and blast doors began to slam shut. Damon took point, moving with the fluidity of a veteran soldier despite his injuries. 2 guards rounded the corner ahead. Damon didn't hesitate. He slid across the polished floor, sweeping the legs of the first guard and jamming the stun baton into the chest plate of the second. They went down in a tangle of limbs and armor. "Clear!" Damon shouted. They sprinted past the unconscious guards. Saris pulled up a holographic map on her wrist. "Maintenance shaft 3, she yelled over the sirens. "It connects to the disposal chutes." They burst into the service corridor. Drones buzzed overhead, small, wasp-like machines with laser cutters. Damon shoved Saris behind a crate of supplies. "Stay down!" He picked up a heavy canister of cleaning fluid and hurled it at the drones. It smashed into the lead drone, sending it spinning into the others. They exploded in a shower of sparks. "Go!" They reached the disposal chute. It was a long, angled slide that smelled of ozone and rotting gag root. "It leads to the loading docks," Saris said, wrinkling her nose. "Ladies first," Damon grinned, though his eyes were alert and dangerous. They slid down the chute, tumbling out into a massive underground loading bay. Hover trucks and skimmers were docked in rows. "There," Saris pointed. A beat-up, rusted cargo skimmer was hovering near the exit, its engine idling with a sound like a box of rocks. The side door slid open, and Tina waved. "Your carriage awaits," Tina shouted. They scrambled into the skimmer. Damon slammed the door shut just as a squad of palace guard burst into the bay, firing plasma rifles. Bolts of blue energy sizzled against the hull. "Punch it," Damon yelled. Tina slammed the throttle forward. The skimmer lurched, backfired, and then shot out of the bay, diving into the vertical abyss of the city. They plummeted into the Undercity. Sarath Prime was a world of layers. The top was crystal and light. The bottom was neon and shadow. The Undercity was a chaotic maze of stacked walkways, black markets, and steam vents. The skimmer weaved through traffic, dodging heavy freighters and advertising drones. "We have pursuit," Tina yelled. "2 interceptors on our tail." Damon looked out the rear port. 2 sleek, military-grade skimmers were diving after them, their sirens cutting through the noise of the city. "Can you lose them?" Damon asked. "In this bucket?" Tina laughed darkly. "No, but I can make them regret it. Hold on." She jerked the stick to the left, diving into a narrow alleyway between 2 massive habitation towers. The skimmer scraped against the walls, sparks flying. "We have to ditch the vehicle," Saris said, clutching the safety rail. "They will track the engine signature." Tina nodded. "I know a drop point near the market district. Be ready to run." The skimmer slammed onto a landing pad, skidding to a halt. "Get out!" Tina shouted. "I will lead them away." Damon and Saris jumped out. They didn't look back. They sprinted into the crowd. The market district was a sensory overload, alien spices, flashing holographic signs, and the press of thousands of bodies. Damon grabbed Saris's hand, pulling her through the throng. Scanning drones hovered above the crowd, their blue searchlights sweeping back and forth. "They are scanning faces," Damon hissed. "Keep your head down." A drone swept toward them. Damon pulled Saris sharply to the right, ducking into a narrow gap between 2 stalls selling unauthorized tech. It was a dead end, a cramped alcove filled with steam pipes. Damon pushed Saris against the wall, pressing his body against hers to shield her from the street. "Stay still," he whispered, his mouth inches from her ear. The drone hovered outside the alley. Its blue light washed over Damon's back. He held his breath, every muscle tense. He could feel Saris trembling against him. She was looking up at him, her eyes wide. In the cramped, dark space, the rest of the world faded. There was only the heat of his body, the rough texture of his uniform, and the smell of his sweat and fear. Saris's empathy flared. She felt his protective instinct wrapping around her like a blanket. It was fierce, overwhelming, and terrified, not for himself, but for her. The drone hovered for an eternity. Then, with a mechanical whir, it moved on. Damon let out a long exhale. He didn't move away immediately. He looked down at her, his gaze lingering on her mouth, her eyes, the pulse of light at her throat. "Clear," he whispered, his voice rough. He pulled back, creating distance. Saris felt the loss of his warmth immediately. "Let's keep moving," she said, her voice unsteady. Tanah's safe house is 2 blocks east. The safe house was a converted storage unit behind a neon signage shop. It was small, cluttered with stolen tech, and smelled of solder and cheap noodles. But it was safe. Tanah had not returned yet. But the door code worked. They slipped inside, and the heavy maglock sealed the world out. For the first time in 48 hours, there was silence. Damon walked to the sink and splashed water on his face. He hissed as the cold water hit his split lip. He turned to face Saris. She was standing in the middle of the room, still wearing her armor, looking lost. "Tell me," Damon said quietly. "What? Tell me everything. No more royal summaries. I want the truth." Saris took a deep breath. She told him. She told him about the recording in the archives. She told him about Varen's chaos theory. She told him about the threat against his life and the forced marriage to Kale. "He threatened to kill you," she said, her voice shaking. "He said if I didn't marry Kale, you would have an accident. I panicked. I thought if I played along, I could buy time." Damon leaned against the counter. He listened without interrupting. As she spoke, the anger that had been fueling him began to evaporate. She hadn't abandoned him. She had stepped in front of a bullet for him, in the only way she knew how. She stood there, tears streaming down her silver face, stripping away every layer of her training until she was just a woman who was terrified of losing him. "You risked everything," Damon said softly. "Your title, your throne, your life, for a grunt." Saris looked down at her hands. "You are not a grunt. Damon, you are the only person in this galaxy who tells me the truth." Damon pushed off the counter. He walked over to the low couch in the corner and sat down, wincing as his ribs protested. "You should go back," he said. Saris's head snapped up. "What?" "You should go back to the palace," Damon said, staring at the floor. "Say I kidnapped you, blame it all on me. Maybe you can still salvage your position. If you stay here, you are a fugitive. You lose everything." He looked at her, his eyes dark and serious. "I can't let you throw your life away for me. Saris, I am just a soldier. You are the future of your people, and you have a duty." The words hit her like a physical blow. A duty. Always a duty. She felt a tearing sensation in her chest. The bond between them, that strange, invisible tether that had formed in the escape pod, strengthened on the alien station and solidified in the alleyway, was pulling at her. She looked at him. He was bruised, dirty, and exhausted. He was trying to be noble. He was trying to protect her one last time by pushing her away. And she realized, with sudden, crystal clarity, that she didn't care about the throne. She didn't care about the crown. A queen without a heart was just a statue. She walked across the room. Damon watched her approach. He expected her to argue. He expected her to give him an order. Instead, she sat down next to him on the couch. She was trembling. Her bioluminescence was shifting rapidly, flashes of gold, violet, and a deep, resonant blue. "I am tired of duty," she whispered. She moved closer. The heat radiating from her was intense. "I am tired of being a symbol. Damon. I am tired of being the bridge. I am tired of being a weapon for my uncle to point." She reached out and placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart again. It was hammering against his ribs. "I want to be selfish," she said, her voice trembling, "just for once." Damon looked at her. He saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the raw, open need. "Saris, don't," he warned, his voice straining. "If we cross this line, there is no going back. You know that." "I know," she said. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. It was a Sarathian gesture of absolute trust, exposing the mind, the center of self, to another. "I want you human," she whispered, the words brushing against his lips. "I can't fight it anymore." Damon froze. The confession hung in the air, heavy and electric. He had spent 20 years fighting her people. He had spent the last week fighting his own instincts. But looking at her now, feeling her breath on his skin, the fight went out of him. He raised his hands, cupping her face. His thumbs brushed the glowing patterns along her cheekbones. Her skin was incredibly soft. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I am yours," she answered. Damon didn't hesitate anymore. He closed the gap. The kiss was not like the movies, and it was desperate. It was hungry. It was the collision of two people who had been running for their lives and had finally found the only safe place left in the universe. Saris gasped against his mouth. Her empathic senses flooded, and she didn't just feel his physical touch. She felt him. She felt the immense, crushing weight of his devotion. She felt his self-loathing, the belief that he wasn't good enough for her, washing away under the sheer force of his desire. She felt the awe he held for her, treating her not as a princess, but as something sacred. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss. Her armor deactivated, retracting into its nodes, leaving only the thin flight suit beneath. Damon groaned low in his throat, his hands tangling in the hair at the base of her neck. He pulled her down with him as he leaned back against the cushions. The outside world, the drones, the regent, the war ceased to exist. There was only the dim light of the safe house, the hum of the neon sign outside, and the two of them, finally, fully, giving in. The morning light filtered through the grimy window of the safe house, painting stripes of dust across the floor. Damon woke up first. He was tangled in a blanket that smelled of engine grease, with a Sarathian princess asleep on his chest. He lay there for a moment, just breathing. He felt the steady rise and fall of her breathing. He watched the faint rhythmic pulse of her bioluminescence, a soft, contented blue rippling across her shoulder. He should be panicked. They were fugitives. The entire empire was hunting them. He had essentially kidnapped royalty and seduced her. The list of charges against him was probably long enough to wrap around the planet. But he didn't feel panicked. He felt anchored. Saris stirred. Her head tendrils twitched, sensing his wakefulness. She lifted her head, blinking sleepily. Her obsidian eyes met his. For a second, there was a flicker of shyness, a memory of the intensity of the night before. "Good morning, Your Highness," Damon rasped, his voice thick with sleep. "Good morning, Sergeant," Saris replied, a small smile playing on her lips. She shifted, wincing slightly as she stretched. So, Damon said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, is this standard protocol for interspecies diplomacy? Because if so, the orientation manual really left out the best parts. Saris laughed, a bright, clear sound that chased away the shadows in the room. I believe we have rewritten the manual, she said. She rested her chin on his chest, looking at him seriously. Do you regret it? She asked. Damon looked at the ceiling, then back at her. I regret that it took a conspiracy and a death sentence to get us here, he said. But this? Us? No, never. Saris nodded. She felt the truth of his words in her mind. There was no deception, no doubt. Just a fierce, calm certainty. We cannot run anymore, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. No. Damon agreed, we can't. If we run, Varen wins. The war starts, and we spend the rest of our lives hiding in holes like this. We have to fight, Saris said. We have to attack, Damon corrected. We know their plan. We know the players. We just need a way to shout it loud enough that the galaxy has to listen. Saris sat up, the blanket falling away. She looked at her armor piled in the corner. The Unity Vigil, she said. What? The Unity Vigil is tonight, Saris explained, her eyes lighting up. It is a broadcast event. Every screen on Sarath Prime, every ship in the fleet, every embassy will be tuned in. Varen is planning to use it to announce the mobilization against the Coalition. Damon sat up, ignoring the stiffness in his ribs. If we can hijack that broadcast, he mused, we can show them everything. Saris finished. The recordings, the logs, the truth. It is suicide, Damon said, a grin slowly spreading across his face. Breaking into the central broadcast spire during a military lockdown? Saris smiled back, a dangerous, sharp-toothed smile that reminded him she was a predator by nature. We have an engineer, a smuggler, and a frantic desire to not die, she said. I like our odds. Damon leaned forward and kissed her quickly. Hard. Get dressed, princess. We have a government to overthrow. The plan to save the galaxy was being drawn on a grease-stained table with a stolen laser stylus. The safe house in the Undercity hummed with the noise of cooling fans and the distant rhythmic thrum of the city above. Tana, the smuggler, sat on a crate cleaning a plasma pistol. Leo, the palace engineer, was frantically typing on 3 different data pads. Saris and Damon stood over the holographic map, their shoulders touching, a silent testament to the line they had crossed the night before. Here is the kill switch, Leo said, pointing to a pulsing red node on the map. Varen calls it the defensive strike protocol. It is not defensive. It is a synchronized launch of orbital kinetic rods targeting major coalition population centers. Damon leaned in, his face grim. Rods from God. We outlawed those 200 years ago. They don't just kill cities, they crack crusts. If he launches those, the Coalition won't just retaliate. They will glass this entire planet. That is the point, Saris said, her voice steady but cold. Varen wants an existential war. He believes the Empire only thrives when it is fighting for survival. He wants to burn the bridges so we have no choice but to conquer. We have 6 hours, Tana chimed in, sighting down the barrel of her pistol. The Unity Vigil starts at sunset. Varen is going to announce your execution and the mobilization of the fleet in the same breath. We need to hijack that signal, Saris said. We need to turn the vigil into a confession. To do that, Leo said, wiping sweat from his forehead, we need 2 things. Access to the Imperial AI Nexus to upload the evidence, and someone on the inside to keep the security grid from frying us before we get there. The door to the safe house hissed open. Damon spun around, his hand flying to the stun baton he had stolen. "Relax, Sergeant," a weary voice rasped. "I was invited." An elderly Sarathian stepped into the light. He wore the high-collared robes of a counselor, but they were frayed at the edges. A jagged scar ran down one side of his face, cutting through his bioluminescent markings, leaving them dead and gray. "Counselor Vroth," Sarah said, bowing her head slightly. "Thank you for coming." Vroth looked at the princess, then at the human soldier standing beside her. He did not sneer. He looked resigned. "I lost 2 sons to the coalition railguns at the Battle of Antares," Vroth said, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "I hated humans for a decade. But if Varen launches those rods, my daughter's children will burn in the retaliation. I am too old to bury any more family. Princess." He placed a data chip on the table. "This is the patrol rotation for the Palace Guard, and the override codes for the lower maintenance sectors." Damon picked up the chip. "Why trust us, Counselor? You have every reason to want me dead." Vroth looked Damon in the eye. "Because fear is a circle, human. Someone has to break it." A static-filled voice crackled over the secure comms unit on the table. "And that is where I come in," the voice said. It was a human accent, sharp and fast. "Who is this?" Damon asked. "Call me Jax," the voice replied. "I am the IT specialist for the Coalition Embassy. Or I was until they locked us down. I am currently rerouting your biometric signatures through a sanitation server. According to the Palace security grid, you two are currently a malfunctioning garbage disposal unit on level 9. Damon smirked. "Nice work. Jax, why are you helping?" "My little brother was on the UNS Kestrel," Jax said. "The ship Admiral Pike sacrificed to start this mess. I want Pike's head on a platter. And I hear you are the delivery service." Saris looked around the room. A smuggler, a terrified engineer, a grieving counselor, a vengeful hacker, and a disgraced soldier. It was the most pathetic revolution in Sarathian history. It was perfect. "We have our team," Saris said. "Leo, Tana, you handle the broadcast uplift. Vroth, keep the council distracted. Jax, keep the cyber wolves off our backs." She turned to Damon. "And you and I, Sergeant? We are going to break into the brain of the Empire. The palace was a fortress designed to keep armies out. It was not designed to keep a rebellious teenager in." Saris led Damon to a rusted grate behind a waterfall in the ornamental gardens. The spray soaked them instantly, chilling Damon to the bone, but Saris didn't flinch. She pried the grate open with a grunt of exertion. "This is the way?" Damon asked, peering into the dark, spiderweb tunnel. "I used to use this route to escape my etiquette tutors," Saris whispered. "It runs behind the primary heat exchangers and comes out directly under the throne room." Damon shook his head, a small smile touching his lips. "You were a delinquent. I knew I liked you." They crawled. The tunnel was cramped, smelling of ozone and centuries of dust. For 20 minutes. They moved in silence, the only sound the scraping of their knees and the distant hum of the palace's power core. It was intimate in the dark. Damon could see the soft glow of Saris's ankles ahead of him. He was painfully aware of how much they were risking. If they were caught here, there would be no trial, just a plasma bolt in the dark. They reached a vertical shaft. Saris stopped. "We have to climb," she whispered. "The AI nexus is in the Spire of Whispers. It is the highest point in the palace." They ascended the ladder, emerging into a narrow service corridor lined with fiber optic cables that pulsed with blue light. "This is it," Saris said, pointing to a massive set of crystalline doors at the end of the hall. "The Nexus? Jax?" Damon tapped his ear, where a new comms bead was seated. We are at the door. Working on it. Jax's voice came through. The encryption here is nasty. It is... Wait. It is changing every second. It is a shifting algorithm. I can open it, Sarah said. She stepped forward. Saris, wait, Damon warned. The Nexus responds to royal biology, Saris explained. It is programmed to obey House Varanth. She placed both hands on the crystal surface. The doors glowed blindingly bright. They sensed her DNA, her empathic signature, her intent. Access granted, a mechanical voice intoned. The doors slid open. The room beyond was breathtaking. It was a sphere of pure light, suspended in the center of the tower. Threads of data, like solid beams of neon, wove through the air, connecting to a central column of pulsing white energy. This was the mind of the Empire, the AI that managed everything from traffic lights to fleet movements. Sarah stepped inside. Damon followed, checking the corridor behind them. I have to interface directly, Sarah said, walking toward the central column. I have to insert the data key from the alien station and force the AI to accept the truth. Is that dangerous? Damon asked, eyeing the pulsing energy. It is a psychic interface, Saris admitted. It will try to reject the new data. It will try to reject me. It protects the Empire's narrative. If I am not strong enough, it could burn out my mind. Damon grabbed her arm. Then don't do it. We find another way. There is no other way, Saris said gently. She covered his hand with hers. Watch my back. Damon, do not let anyone interrupt me. She stepped into the beam of light. Her body went rigid. Her head fell back and her eyes rolled up, turning pure white. She gasped, a sound of shock and pain, as the mind of a 1,000-year-old machine crashed into her consciousness. Damon spun around, facing the door. He drew his stun baton and Tina's plasma pistol. Okay, he muttered. You handle the ghosts. I will handle the guards. Inside the machine. Saris was drowning. It was not a room. It was an ocean of voices. The AI was not a cold calculator. It was the collective memory of every Sarathian ruler who had ever lived. It roared at her. Traitor, the voices whispered. Weakling, you would ally with the monsters? Images flooded her mind. She saw humans with fangs tearing at Sarathian children. She saw coalition ships burning her homeworld. It was propaganda, distilled and potent, designed to bypass logic and trigger pure, primal fear. Saris screamed silently. This is not real. It is necessary. The voice of the AI countered, fear keeps us safe. Hatred keeps us strong. Look what happens if you trust them. The simulation shifted. Saris saw Damon. He was standing in the safe house. He was smiling at her. Then, a coalition soldier walked up behind him and put a knife through his heart. Damon fell, bleeding out, his eyes accusing her. You trusted them, the dead Damon whispered, and you killed me. The grief hit Saris like a physical blow. Her heart stopped. The pain was unbearable. It would be so easy to let go. To accept the lie, to believe that war was the only way to prevent this pain. But then, she remembered the reality. She remembered the feel of his hand on her cheek. She remembered the rough texture of his voice when he told her he was tired of being a weapon. She remembered the heartbeat she had felt under her palm, steady, strong, and undeniably real. No, Saris thought, finding her center in the storm. That is a lie. She pushed back against the ocean. Damon is not a monster. He is a man who saved me. He is a man who loves me. She reached into her pocket, in the physical world and the mental one, and pulled out the alien data key. It burned with a cold, blue light. This is the truth, Saris declared to the voices. We are not enemies. We are just two species afraid of the dark. She slammed the key into the mental architecture of the AI. The scream of the machine shattered the illusion. The red light of the propaganda war dissolved, replaced by the cool blue stream of raw data. The logs from Helios Crown, the recordings of Varen, the proof, processing. The AI whispered, its voice sounding confused, like a child waking up. Re-evaluating definition of enemy. Outside, in the physical world, the war had arrived. Damon ducked as a plasma bolt scorched the wall where his head had been a second ago. 3 royal guards, elite commandos in heavy armor, were advancing down the corridor. They moved in perfect synchronization, firing suppression bursts. "Surrender! Traitor!" the lead guard shouted. "Not today!" Damon yelled back. He rolled out from behind the doorframe, firing the plasma pistol. The shot took the lead guard in the shoulder, spinning him around, but the armor held. Damon cursed. He holstered the pistol and activated the stun baton. It crackled with blue lightning. He waited. The second guard charged, swinging a heavy energy pike. Damon stepped inside the guard's reach, ignoring the screaming pain in his cracked ribs. He parried the pike with the baton, the impact jarring his teeth, and drove his knee into the guard's midsection. As the guard doubled over, Damon jammed the baton into the unprotected joint at the neck. The guard convulsed and dropped. 2 left. Damon breathed hard, sweat stinging his eyes. He glanced back at Saris. She was suspended in the light, her body trembling, tears streaming down her silver face. She was fighting her own war. "I am not letting you touch her," Damon growled. The remaining guards advanced. At the Grand Plaza of Unity, 10,000 citizens had gathered. Millions more were watching via the feeds. Regent Varen stood on the high balcony, bathed in spotlights. He looked magnificent. He looked sorrowful. Citizens of the Empire. Varen's voice boomed. "It is with a heavy heart that I speak to you. The human prisoner, the one my niece foolishly trusted, has escaped. This proves their treachery knows no bounds." The crowd murmured, a sound like a rising storm. "We have no choice," Varen continued, raising his fist. "We must strike before they destroy us. I am authorizing the immediate mobilization of the fleet. We will scour the coalition from the stars." Cheering began. It was a dark, angry sound. And then, the massive holographic screens floating above the plaza flickered. Varen's face distorted, turning into static. A new image appeared. It was shaky footage. It showed a meeting room. It showed Varen handing a data pad to a human admiral. "The princess will be on the podium," the recorded voice of Varen said, clear as a bell. "Her death will give me the mandate I need." The cheering died instantly. Silence swept the plaza. On the balcony, Varen froze. He tapped his earpiece. "Cut the feed. Cut it now." "We can't, sir," a panicked technician replied. "The signal is coming from the AI Nexus. It has locked us out." On the screens, the video cut to a live feed. Sarah stood in the center of the Nexus, looking exhausted but fierce. Beside her, breathing hard and bleeding from a cut on his forehead, stood Damon Hale. "People of Serath," Sarah said. Her voice did not boom. It cut through the silence with quiet power. "You have been lied to. There is no human invasion. There was no assassin. There was only a man who wanted a war so badly he was willing to kill his own family to get it." She gestured to Damon. "This man is not your enemy. He is the reason I am alive. We have been taught to fear them. We have been taught they are monsters. But the only monsters are the ones standing on that balcony." Varen stared at the screen. He saw his power evaporating like mist. The crowd below was turning, looking up at him not with adoration, but with dawning horror. He had lost the narrative, but he still had the weapon. Varen turned to his personal guard commander. "Secure the control deck," he whispered, his eyes wide with madness. "Initiate the launch sequence for the orbital platform." "Sir," the commander hesitated, "the defensive strike? But the council has not approved." "I am the council!" Varen screamed, spit flying from his lips. "Burn the humans! Burn them all!" In the Nexus, the lights turned red. Jax's voice screamed in Damon's ear. "He is doing it. He is overriding the safeties. He is launching the kinetic rods." "Where?" Damon shouted. "Targeting the human colony on Vega Fu," Jax replied. "Impact in 4 minutes. Total annihilation." Damon looked at Saris. She had heard it too. "The control deck," she said. "It is 3 floors down." They ran. They didn't bother with stealth. They sprinted through the corridors, ignoring the pain in their bodies. The palace was in chaos. Guards were running in every direction, unsure who to obey, the regent or the princess on the screens. They burst onto the control deck. It was a circular room overlooking the city. Varen stood at the main console, his hands flying across the keys. A holographic countdown hovered in the air. Zo 3 Zo 2:59. "Step away from the console," Damon yelled, leveling his pistol. Varen spun around. He was holding a disruptor, a nasty, illegal weapon that shredded organic matter. "You ruined everything," Varen shrieked. "It was perfect. We would have been gods." "It is over, Uncle," Saris said, stepping forward. "The people know. The guards know. You have nowhere to go. I have the button." Varen laughed, a high, jagged sound. "If I launch this, the coalition will retaliate. The war will start whether you like it or not. I will drag this galaxy into the fire if I have to." He reached for the final launch key. Damon fired. Varen dropped behind the console, the plasma bolt scorching the metal where his chest had been. He popped up and fired the disruptor blindly. The beam tore through the room, disintegrating a row of monitors. Saris ran for the secondary terminal. "I can override him. I need to link the alien key to the weapon guidance system. Cover me!" She dove for the terminal, her fingers tapping furiously. Damon vaulted over a railing, drawing Varen's fire. "Hey, old man, look at me!" Varen snarled and fired at Damon. The disruptor beam grazed Damon's arm, searing the flesh. Damon gritted his teeth, suppressing a scream, and returned fire. "Saris! How long?" Damon shouted. 30 seconds, Saris yelled. "The encryption is heavy." Varen realized what she was doing. He turned his weapon away from Damon. He aimed directly at Saris's exposed back. "No." Damon didn't think. He didn't calculate the odds. He just moved. He threw himself across the open space, sliding between the disruptor and the princess. Varen fired. The beam hit Damon in the chest plate. It didn't disintegrate him. The ceramic armor took the brunt of the energy dispersal. But the impact was like being hit by a freight train. It shattered the plate, cracked his sternum, and threw him backward. Damon hit the floor and didn't move. "Damon!" Saris screamed. She spun around. She saw him lying there, smoke rising from his chest. She saw the blood pooling on the white floor. Time stopped. The countdown on the screen ticked. 00:45, 00:44. Varen stood up, smiling. A noble sacrifice. He sneered. "Now finish it. Saris, step away, or you join him." Saris looked at Damon. She looked at her uncle, and something inside her finally snapped. Not into madness, but into absolute crystalline clarity. She didn't care about the throne. She didn't care about the empire. She would burn it all down to save the man on the floor. But saving him meant saving the world he fought for. She turned back to the console. She didn't use her fingers. She slammed her hand onto the interface panel and opened her mind fully. She didn't ask the machine. She commanded it. She poured every ounce of her rage, her grief, and her love into the system. She used the alien data key as a battering ram. Targeting invalid, she screamed telepathically at the weapon system. New coordinates, deep space, vector, sunward. The system whined. The countdown paused at 0010. Override accepted. The holographic map shifted. The red trajectory lines targeting the human colony vanished. They swung upward, pointing harmlessly into the void. Launch initiated, the computer announced. Through the viewport, a massive beam of light shot up from the orbital platform. It knifed through the atmosphere and vanished into the dark, hitting absolutely nothing. Varen stared at the sky. "No," he whispered. "No!" He raised the disruptor again, aiming at Saris. "I will kill you, drop it!" The doors to the control deck burst open. The captain of the guard, the same one who had detained Damon days ago, strode in, surrounded by a dozen soldiers. Varen froze. "Captain, arrest these traitors. They sabotaged the defense." The captain looked at Saris. He looked at Damon's unmoving body, and then he looked at Varen. "We saw the broadcast." "Regent," the captain said coldly. He raised his rifle. "Your orders are rescinded. You are under arrest for high treason against the Empire." Varen dropped the weapon. He collapsed to his knees, mumbling about destiny and ungrateful children. Saris didn't watch him being dragged away. She was already on the floor, sliding on her knees to Damon's side. "Damon," she whispered, her hands hovering over his shattered chest plate. His eyes were closed. His face was gray. "Damon, please, open your eyes. That is an order." Damon coughed, a wet, rattling sound. His eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused, glassy with pain. He looked at her. He saw the tears streaming down her face. "Did we win?" he wheezed. "We won," Saris sobbed, pressing her forehead against his. "You idiot, you human idiot. You took a disruptor bolt for me. Standard, bodyguard, protocol." Damon gasped, trying to smile. He winced, his breath hitching. "I think I'm going to take a nap now." "No." Saris grabbed his hand. "Stay with me. Medics, get a medic." The room swarmed with activity, but Saris didn't move. She held his hand as the darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, pouring her own life force, her own warmth, into him through their bond. "I am here," she projected into his mind. "I am not letting you go." And as the medics lifted him onto the stretcher, amidst the wreckage of the peace they had saved, Damon squeezed her hand back, weakly, but he squeezed. The peace was saved, but the floor was stained with blood. And as Saris watched them carry him away, she knew that the real fight, the fight to heal, to rebuild, and to live, was just beginning. The war did not end with a bang, nor with a signed treaty on a piece of parchment. It ended in the quiet, sterile hum of a recovery ward, and in the raucous, terrifying noise of a council chamber that had lost its mind. Serath Prime was a world in shock. The footage from the Unity Vigil, the image of Regent Varen screaming for genocide while the princess and her human protector bled on the floor, had been played on every screen in the Empire, on a loop, for 72 hours. The truth was not a trickle, it was a flood that washed away decades of propaganda. But truth leaves a mess behind. In the High Council chamber, the shouting was deafening. The room, a circular amphitheater of floating obsidian platforms, was packed with matriarchs, generals, and guild leaders. They were terrified. Their fleet was grounded. Their regent was in irons. Their worldview had been shattered by a girl and a grunt. "We must crown her immediately," shouted High Matriarch Coral, her robes fluttering as she paced her platform. "The people are panicking. They need a symbol." "She is compromised," countered General Torvis, a scarred old warrior who still looked at humans as targets. She stood against her own blood to save a Terran soldier. She is emotionally unstable. She is the only reason you are not currently being vaporized by a coalition retaliation strike. Another voice cut through the din. The doors to the chamber hissed open. Silence fell like a guillotine. Princess Saris walked in. She was not wearing the crimson armor of the huntress, nor the shimmering gown of a diplomat. She wore a simple tunic of unadorned gray silk, the color of mourning, and a bandage was visible at her temple. She did not float. She walked, her boots clicking rhythmically on the stone floor. Behind her, a step to the left, walked Sergeant Damon Hale. His left arm was in a sling, his chest plate replaced by a medical compression vest. He looked pale, gaunt, and tired, but his eyes scanned the room with the lethal precision of a wolf entering a kennel. "You are discussing my future," Saris said, her voice calm but carrying to the highest tiers. "I thought I should participate." "Your Highness," Matriarch Coral said, bowing low. "We were just discussing the coronation. The throne is empty. You must ascend. Tonight, to restore order." "No," Saris said. The word hung in the air. "No?" Torvis sputtered. "You refuse the crown?" "I refuse a coronation built on panic," Saris replied, stepping into the center of the room. "You want to crown me so you can pretend the last 30 years did not happen. You want to hide behind my robes and go back to business as usual." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every noble who had silently supported Varen's war. "There is no going back. The empire you knew is dead. My uncle killed it when he fired on his own people. If I take the throne, it will not be as a bandage to cover the wound. It will be to heal it." "What do you propose?" Coral asked, her voice trembling. "A joint peace commission," Saris stated. "Not generals, not politicians. Survivors, engineers who have to fix the hulls you broke, doctors who have to patch the bodies, mothers who lost children, human and Sarathian. They will draft the new terms of our existence." "And him?" Torvis pointed a shaking finger at Damon. "Does the human vote too? Is he your advisor now, or your pet?" Damon stepped forward. The movement was small, but the threat was palpable. He didn't speak. He just looked at the general with a boredom that was more insulting than anger. "Sergeant Hale is not my pet, General," Saris said, her bioluminescence flaring a sharp, warning gold. "He is the man who saved this council from becoming radioactive dust. And unlike most of you, he knows the cost of the orders you give." She turned back to the center. "I will lead this commission. And when, and only when, we have a constitution that guarantees this war can never happen again, I will consider the crown. Until then, I am just Saris." She turned and walked out. Damon followed, his hand resting instinctively on the stun baton at his hip. The hallway was quiet. "That went well," Damon murmured, wincing as he adjusted his sling. "I think Torvis popped a blood vessel." "He will recover," Saris said, letting out a long, shaky breath. "Unfortunately." She leaned against the wall, the adrenaline fading, leaving her exhausted. Damon moved closer, using his good body to shield her from the sight of the guards down the hall. "You were incredible in there," he said softly. "I was terrifying," she corrected. "I sounded like my mother." Damon smiled, a crooked expression that tugged at the stitches on his cheek. "You sounded like a queen. Saris, a real one." The political battle was one thing, the social battle was another. The galaxy loved a scandal, and the idea of a Sarathian princess bonding with a human soldier was the juiciest meat the media had been fed in a century. The rumors were everywhere. Some were romanticized, painting them as star-crossed lovers written in the constellations. Others were crude, biological speculations on how two different species could possibly fit together. The press conference was held on the landing deck of the Royal Palace, overlooking the glimmering spires of the capital. It was a sea of cameras, drones, and microphones. Sarah stood at the podium. Damon stood 2 paces behind her, in the bodyguard zone, though he was no longer technically employed by anyone. The questions came like shrapnel. Princess, is it true you gave him state secrets? Princess, did he brainwash you with human psychological warfare tactics? Sergeant Hale, how many Sarathians did you kill before you decided to sleep with one? Damon flinched at that one. His jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes forward. Disciplined silence, his only armor. Saris raised a hand. The noise died down. A reporter from a conservative Sarathian newsfeed stepped forward. His skin was a dull, judgmental gray. Your Highness, he said, his voice dripping with faux concern. We must address the elephant in the room. You are an empath. Humans are chaotic, emotional typhoons. Is it not possible that your proximity to this male has overwhelmed your senses? Are you not, in fact, compromised by your feelings? Sarah stared at him. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Compromised, she repeated, testing the word. She looked over her shoulder at Damon. He looked back, his dark eyes steady, offering her no answers, only support. He was willing to let her throw him to the wolves if it saved her reputation. Saris turned back to the reporter. You ask if my judgment is weakened, she said, her voice ringing clear across the deck. You imply that love is a defect, a blindfold. She gripped the podium. For 20 years. I looked at humans and saw monsters. I saw what I was told to size. I saw enemies. My judgment was not my own. It was a script written by fear. She gestured to Damon without looking back. This man carries the scars of our weapons on his skin. He carries the ghosts of his friends in his memory. And yet, when the roof fell in, he used his body to shield mine. He did not ask if I was a princess. He did not ask if I was Sarathian. He just saw a life that needed saving. She leaned into the microphone. My love for him did not blind me, sir. It woke me up. It sharpened my judgment because it forced me to look at the world through eyes that were not my own. I saw humanity not as a threat, but as a mirror. She paused, her bioluminescence glowing a soft, resolute white. So, yes, I am compromised. I am compromised by hope. I am compromised by the belief that we are better together than we are apart. And if that makes me unfit to rule in your eyes, then you are not looking for a queen. You are looking for a statue. The reporter sat down, stunned. Damon let out a breath. He looked at the back of her head, at the intricate silver patterns on her neck, and felt a surge of pride so intense it almost knocked him over. He stepped forward, breaking protocol, and stood right beside her. He didn't touch her, the cameras were still rolling, but he closed the gap. He was telling the galaxy, without saying a word. I am here. Move me if you can. The cameras flashed, capturing the image that would hang in history books. The silver princess and the scarred soldier, standing shoulder to shoulder against the sky. Peace, they learned, was mostly about welding. In the months that followed, the rhetoric faded, replaced by the grinding, sweaty reality of reconstruction. The Joint Peace Commission Saris proposed became a reality. A montage of recovery played out across the system. At the orbital docks of Serath Prime, mixed crews of human engineers and Sarathian fabricators worked on the hull of a damaged station. It was messy. They argued about metric versus imperial measurements. They shouted over incompatible tools. But at lunch, they sat on the girders, legs dangling over the atmosphere, sharing food. A human offered a protein bar. A Sarathian offered a crystallized fruit. They ate. They grimaced at the strange tastes. And they laughed. On the ground, Saris and Damon visited the newly dedicated Memorial of the Fallen. It was a vast plaza of black obsidian, polished until it reflected the twin moons. Engraved into the stone were the names of the dead, not separated by species. Alphabetical, a human name next to a Sarathian name. Anderson, Kyle next to Andrak, Lil. Damon walked the lines of names. He wasn't in uniform. He wore civilian clothes, a simple jacket and trousers that felt strange on his frame. He stopped at a name, Corporal Jens, his radio operator, the kid who had died screaming for his mother on the moon of Korra. Damon reached out, tracing the letters with a trembling finger. "I couldn't save him," Damon whispered. Sarah stood beside him. She wore a cloak to hide her glowing skin, trying to give him privacy in a public space. "You carried him," she said softly. "You told me the story. You carried him 3 miles to the medevac. He died anyway." Saris reached out and took his hand. Her empathic sense picked up the jagged shards of his guilt, the survivor's disease that whispered why you and not them. "You live for him." "Damon," she said, "you build the peace he never got to see. That is how you save him now." Damon looked at her. His eyes were wet. He squeezed her hand, anchoring himself to the warmth of her palm. "It is heavy," he said. "I know," she replied. "I will help you carry it." They stood there for a long time, 2 small figures against the obsidian, surrounded by the silence of a million ghosts, making a silent pact to make the survival worth the cost. It wasn't all heavy. Sometimes, it was ridiculous. In the private royal quarters, music was playing. It was a complex, polyrhythmic Sarathian waltz that sounded like a cello fighting a synthesizer. 1, 2, 3, glide. 1, 2, 3, glide, Saris instructed. Damon was sweating. He was trying to follow her lead, but his boots felt like they were made of lead. "I am not gliding," he grumbled, looking at his feet. "I am lumbering. I am a lumbering bear in a china shop." "You are stiff," Saris laughed, drifting effortlessly around him. "You move like you are dodging sniper fire." "Relax your hips. My hips are tactical." Damon defended. "They do not relax, they evade." He tried to spin her. He miscounted the beat. He stepped on the hem of her gown, stumbled forward, and nearly took them both down. Saris caught him, her strength surprising for her slender frame. They froze, chests heaving, faces inches apart. "I think," Saris teased, her eyes dancing with amusement, "that you are lucky I have a fetish for uncoordinated humans." "Is that a thing?" Damon asked, breathless. "It is now." She kissed him, quick and light, taking the sting out of his clumsiness. Later, she took him to the Festival of Lights. It was a celebration of the moons, where the entire city turned off its artificial power and lit millions of floating lanterns. The air was filled with music that wasn't just sound, it was empathic resonance. To Saris, it was a symphony of joy and nostalgia. To Damon, it was sensory overload. He stood on the balcony, blinking rapidly. "It is loud," he said, "not the sound, the feeling. Is everyone this happy?" "It is the music," Saris explained. "It projects emotion." Damon rubbed his chest. "It feels like I just drank 6 espressos and fell in love with a toaster. I need subtitles for these feelings." Saris laughed, wrapping her arm around his waist. "Just feel it." "Damon, you don't have to analyze it. Just let it be good." Damon looked at the sea of lights. He looked at the woman beside him, her skin glowing in harmony with the lanterns. He stopped trying to categorize the threat level. He stopped looking for the exit. "Okay," he whispered. "It is good." 6 months after the battle, the Constitution was ready. Sarah sat in her study, the document displayed on the desk. The council had capitulated. They had no choice. The people were with her. "They have agreed to the terms," she told Damon, who was sitting on the windowsill reading a data pad. "All of them?" Damon asked. "All of them. The Senate will be elected. The military budget is capped. And," she tapped a specific clause, Article 19, "the prohibition on interspecies unions is abolished." Damon looked up. He set the datapad down. "So it is legal," he said. "It is the law," she confirmed. She stood up and walked over to him. "They want me to take the crown now." "Damon, they want an empress. Do you want to be one?" Saris looked out the window at the rebuilding city. "I want to safeguard what we built. If wearing a crown helps me do that, I will wear it. But I will not wear it alone." She looked at him pointedly. Damon stood up. He walked over to the desk and picked up a different document. It was a commission offer from the new Joint Security Force. "Admiral Vance offered me a rank," he said. "Colonel, in charge of the new hybrid special ops teams." Saris felt a spike of fear. "Back to the war?" Damon shook his head. He tossed the datapad onto the desk. I turned it down. Saris blinked. "You did?" "I am done carrying a rifle. Saris, I am done kicking down doors." Damon looked at his hands, the hands that had killed, and the hands that had saved. Vance countered. "He offered me a liaison position, training, teaching young Sarathian and human cadets how to work together, how to talk before they shoot." He looked at her. "I think I would be good at that, teaching them how not to make our mistakes." Sarah smiled, a genuine, radiant expression that lit up the room. "You would be excellent at that, Professor Hale." They walked out onto the main balcony. It was late. The twin moons, Ion and Jorah, hung heavy and full in the violet sky. The city below was a tapestry of light, peaceful and alive. Damon leaned against the railing. The wind ruffled his hair, which was starting to show a little more gray at the temples. He was quiet for a long time. Sarah sensed the shift in his mood, the shadow passing over the sun. "What is it?" she asked, moving to stand beside him. Damon looked at the moons. "I am afraid," he admitted. "Of what?" "That we will lose this." Damon gestured to the city, to the peace. "History is a wheel. Saris, we stopped it for a minute, but it always wants to turn back to blood. I am afraid that one day something will happen, a terrorist attack, a misunderstanding, and the galaxy will try to tear us apart again." He turned to her, his eyes vulnerable. "I am afraid I won't be able to stop it next time." Saris listened. She didn't dismiss his fear. She felt it too, the constant low-level hum of anxiety that came with having something precious to lose. She took his hands in hers. Her skin was cool, his was warm. The contrast was perfect. "Do you remember the station?" she asked. "The vision the gate showed us, 2 figures." Damon nodded, standing between the flags. "We saw the end," Saris said, "but we didn't see the middle. We didn't see the days like today. We didn't see the arguments or the bad dancing or the nightmares." She stepped closer, invading his space, claiming it. "The future is not a promise, Damon. It is a choice. We choose it every morning when we wake up. We choose it when we walk into a room together and let them stare. We choose it when we forgive." She raised one hand to cup his jaw, her thumb tracing the scar that ran down his cheek. "They might try to tear us apart, They might try to burn it all down again, but they will have to go through me. And they will have to go through you. Damon looked at her. He saw the iron in her spine, the love in her eyes. He realized she was right. Fear was a possibility, love was a fact. He leaned his forehead against hers. The contact sparked that familiar electric hum between them. "I am not going anywhere," he whispered. "I know," she replied. Then, her voice dropped to a whisper, echoing the words she had said in the safe house, but with a new weight, a weight of permanence. "I want you, human. I still want you. Not as an escape, not as a bodyguard, as my partner, in all of it." Damon closed his eyes, breathing her in, the scent of ozone, rain, and peace. "I am yours, Saris, always." He kissed her. It wasn't the desperate, frantic kiss of the escape pod. It wasn't the terrified, clinging kiss of the safe house. It was deep, slow, and grounded. It was a kiss that tasted of the future. It was a seal on a treaty written not in ink, but in heartbeats. They stood there for a long time, holding each other under the alien moons, two specks of life in a vast, indifferent universe, making their own meaning. Eventually, the air grew cold. "Come inside," Saris said, pulling back gently. "You have an early class tomorrow, Colonel, and you have an empire to run." "Empress," Damon retorted, a grin tugging at his lips. They turned and walked back toward the warm light of the palace. They didn't walk as royal and guard. They didn't walk as alien and human. They walked in step, shoulders brushing, equals. The camera of history pulled back. It rose above the balcony, above the glittering spires of the capital, above the atmosphere of Sarath Prime. It drifted out past the orbital docks, where ships of two designs were docked side by side. It drifted into the deep black, traveling light years in a heartbeat, until it found a lonely sector of space. There, drifting in the void, was the ancient ring station, the mysterious megastructure that had swallowed their pod and started it all. It was no longer dark. Small, temporary research lights dotted its surface. A joint human-Sarathian science vessel was parked nearby, studying the ancient technology. The station's ring glinted in the starlight, a silent silver eye watching the galaxy. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had seen wars burn stars. But now, for the first time in eons, it saw something new. It saw two former enemies learning that survival wasn't about building higher walls or bigger guns. It was about the terrifying, brave, and necessary act of opening the door. The station drifted on, silent and waiting, as the stars around it burned a little brighter than before.